Yes. Hello, my beautiful friends. It is an amazing day. I hope your weekend was outstanding. As we wait for those tubes to fire up, I want to welcome you back. We've got a busy week ahead. We've got 15 days, some people calling it 14 days, until the election is upon us. 2 weeks out from tomorrow. We're very excited about it. And until that occurs, we've got a lot of business to attend to here today. And it looks like the tubes are connected. That's tremendous news because we've got a heck of a live stream planned. Now, today, my friends, welcome back. Let me give us a preview on what we're digging into today before we jump on in and zoom in. I'm waiting for locals to kick over any minute now, but we've got, there it is. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. We've got a heck of a live stream planned, a ton of business to get into today. Let me give you a preview on what is cooking before we jump into it. We've got a transcript drop, and we're going to read through the full thing. You see that Nathan Wade, Fani Willis's lover, was there in Congress last week, and we've got some video clips from his appearance. But we've also got a nice big transcript that we're going to go through, and it is 132 pages. We're going to see what's inside because many people are reporting already that Nathan is admitting that he was colluding with Biden and Harris to prosecute President Trump. A bunch of people were there. This just occurred. It was with Jim Jordan and the Judiciary Committee, and so we'll go through the full thing. We'll see what some of the juicy business looks like deep down inside. And we'll see what the Republicans asked about and what they didn't ask about, because this is one political operation that is in place right now. And a lot of people are going to look at the election and the aftermath and say, I wonder if there was cheating or if anything was rigged. And the question, of course, has already been answered. They're cheating now. They're prosecuting Trump. This type of defense work, from Trump's perspective, has cost millions of dollars, and it has smeared him all over the place. It's one of 4 attack vectors in the criminal courts alone. That's just one small arena. But we'll read through it and see what Nathan Wade was testifying to, because his lawyer was there with him too. You can see Mr. Barnes is there. Roy Barnes, Fani Willis's lawyer too, was also there. And we've got a bunch of transcript, juicy goodness to read through. So we'll go into it. Now, that's coming up. And we'll see what else Fani's office had to say about it. Then we've got some election news because Jocelyn Benson was out all over the place this weekend. You remember her, the Secretary of State over from Michigan, the same woman who wanted the signatures to be considered presumptively valid as they were being checked. You know what that means? If a signature has a presumption of validity, which she tried to squeeze into that manual until a judge caught her, Republicans caught her, and then called that a no-no. What does that mean? Presumption of validity. It means that you don't check it because it's presumed valid. So they think that they're very clever and very sneaky. And now she's out on the media airwaves trying to defend her rigged state. And Elon is calling her out. So we've got several different posts from Elon. He says, hey, Jocelyn, listen up. Are you removing the ineligible voters? Yes or no? Very simple. Yes or no. We'll see what Jocelyn Benson said in response, because she doesn't answer yes or no questions because they're very sneaky. We've got a great report from the Gateway Pundit that sheds some light on what's going on there in Michigan, and why Jocelyn Benson is, in fact, being dishonest about this and trying to be very sneaky before the election occurs. And we've also got others like Brad Raffensperger. You remember Brad Raffensperger from Georgia? He was also out. We're asking ourselves, big question, of course, when are we going to have an outcome? When are we going to know what the final tallies were on these votes? Is it going to be on Tuesday night, as we suspect, as we hope, as we want, as we pray, or not? Well, we remember last time in 2020, we were live streaming here. We all went to bed. We're like, well, that's an election, folks. It's been a great night. Have a good, see you tomorrow. It's going to be President Trump tomorrow morning. We woke up, water mains were breaking all over the place. disaster afoot. And then suddenly we wake up and all the charts change. Strange, weird. And they all stop counting at the same time. Okay, very convenient. So all that was very fun. And they started delivering, pallets of ballots. And now Raffensperger is coming out and he's saying, well, some of those might come in as late as Friday. All those overseas ballots, those Uokava ballots that they don't match when they come in. There's supposed to be a form there that they fill out that has a social or a driver's license number. And then it's supposed to come in and they verify it. Well, they're just not doing that. So they're going to keep counting those ballots that come in. So they just need to know how much Trump is winning by. And then they can just send those from overseas. Just like, oh, crap. Print them, print them, print them. No, more. 5,000 more. No, another 5,000. Keeps going up. All right, 50,000 now. Just keep printing. Yeah, get some more paper. Go to Costco. Right? And nonstop. And they'll just be postmarking them and just shipping them in overseas. They don't have to be registered. Well, these ballots came in. And then you go and you try to disqualify those ballots. The judge will just say, well, no, those are valid ballots as far as we're concerned. It's a little too late. Should have challenged these before. We'll say, we did! We did challenge them before. Dang it. Anyway, so Raffensperger's out. And we'll see what the Gateway Pundit says about him. We've also got Jill Stein, who's under attack from the Democrats. New York Times is saying that they're now launching an onslaught. They prepared a negative ad blitz against Jill Stein, who hasn't done anything wrong, just like they came after RFK Jr. and Nicole Shanahan and others. If you even dare to challenge the Democrats, well, it's the end of you. And then we've got a clip of Lindsey Graham because, I don't know, there's a clip of Lindsey Graham out there. So he was out over the media. Sometimes a broken clock is right even twice a day is what they say. So we've got a bunch of good stuff to get to, my friends. Very glad and grateful that you're here and with us. I can't wait to read through a transcript. You know how much we enjoy that here. Some people say a little bit too much. What is this Fani doing in our locals chat? Whew. All right. Anyway, so we've got some business to attend to, my friends. Now, before we get into any of that, we've got to talk about natural disasters. It's the new reality that we're all experiencing. We've got wildfires, Hurricane Helene, catastrophes all over the place. Our government can't fix it or figure it out. Now, we're all wired to think it's not going to happen to us, and then boom, we're caught in the middle of it, right in survival mode. Now, being prepared in advance is the best defense. Clearly, we can't rely on our government. The wellness company has an emergency kit that removes the gatekeeper so you can have this stuff at the ready. Bacterial infections, staph, bite wounds, strep throat, respiratory illnesses. We don't want to be at the mercy of other people to rely on our care. And so you can get an emergency medical kit. It's amazing. All from the convenience of your couch. It's digital. Just go online and do it. Fill out an intake form, and you'll see you'll get this kit in 2 weeks. It's approved by people like Dr. Peter McCullough. Bunch of good stuff inside. And so this is your prepared kit, and you can get yours at twc.health/Robert. Link is down in the description below. Use code Robert at checkout. You'll save $30 off, and you'll get free shipping. So check that link out from our friends at the Wellness Company. And thanks, of course, to them for supporting our show and sponsoring today's episode. Now, we've got business to attend to because you know what time it is. It's Fani time. We're going back to Fulton County in Fani land, where we're covering the story of Nathan Wade and Fani Willis. Except this time, Nathan Wade has left the protected territory of Fanitopia, and he's ventured over to Congress because he got a subpoena that he was ignoring for quite some time, then finally showed up with it and was deposed. And so we've got a couple of clips that we'll share with you from what that looked like as he entered into the building and into the depot room before we go through this 132-page transcript and see what Nathan Wade had to say about it. So here's what it sounded like when he was making his way in. You can see a lot of reporters were there.
You have a message for this morning? What do you think about anything that's not on the next debate? Are you going to invoke the Fifth Amendment? Are you going to say anything of relevance to it?
No questions being answered from Nathan Wade. Here's another angle from behind the crew.
Willis not speak about your investigation.
Mr. Wade, are you going to answer the committee's questions given DA Willis's letter instructing you not to discuss the investigation?
You're going to follow those instructions? You have a message for
Oh, yeah, he is.
Did you speak?
What do you think?
Is there anything that's not off limits today for the interview?
Did you speak with DA Phyllis?
Are you
Come
going to
here.
invoke the Fifth Amendment? Are you going to say anything of relevance to that?
All right, so of course, Fani Willis, and we covered this previously, has sent a letter in to Jim Jordan and to Nathan Wade. And we read that before. If you missed that, be sure to check that out. Search Fani Willis on our channel. You'll find it. But they were being told, do not answer any questions. Okay, Nathan, this is your lover speaking, right? You know, it's not just your boss. Now it's like your lover. You're like, ugh. Well, she's not his boss anymore, legally speaking. Probably. Well, we don't know. Strange situation there in Fulton County. But Nathan Wade is there. He goes in and he sits for a deposition. And here is what it sounded like. The deposition of Nathan Wade that occurred October 15th, Tuesday in Washington, D.C. in the Rayburn House office building, starting at 10 a.m. 1 minute early, right on time. Bunch of people there. You see general counsel, special counsel, digital assistant, minority interns, minority detailee, and look who's here on behalf of Nathan Wade. Roy Barnes, that's the lawyer. Same lawyer who represents Fani Willis. As we saw, Steve Sadow, Trump's defense attorney, pointed out for us that there's a convenient thing happening here. Roy Barnes represents both Nathan Wade and Fani Willis. And so what that means is that theoretically now, there's attorney-client privilege between all of them. As long as they're talking about the case, they can talk about the case, and then they can't testify against each other because they'll just invoke attorney-client privilege. And I was talking about it, right? They pulled the same crap with Terrence Bradley, the same attorney who came out and testified on behalf of Nathan Wade. We sat there and watched this play out in court. Terrence Bradley was like, I can't talk about it. Attorney-client privilege, attorney-client privilege. We're like, you guys were like BFFs at a barbecue. You were talking business when you were BFFs at a barbecue? What are you talking about? So same shtick is happening here. But the testimony begins and the deposition starts now. Good morning. This is the deposition of Nathan Wade, former special prosecutor at the Fulton County DA's office. Chairman Jordan, Jim, has requested this deposition as part of the committee's oversight of politically motivated prosecutions by state and local Fanis, just like Fani did, and they use federal funds to do it. Saying on September 20th, the chairman, Jim, authorized the first deposition subpoena, and we sent around that email to your counsel and then to you on Saturday. Now, may have sent that to you after your counsel instructed us that he was not authorized to accept service. So he sent it to your lawyer, then your lawyer sent it to us and said, we don't want it. Then there was a back and forth with the Marshal's service, Nathan sitting there like, meh. And so we'll probably have questions about that, trying to serve you. But ultimately, you were served on September 26th, if you remember that, which in fact was the morning of the subpoena. So you did not appear for the first deposition subpoena. He's laying a record here. Now, on October 2nd, then, Nathan, the committee issued a new subpoena for you to appear today, which is October 15th. And so we're going to mark that as Exhibit 1. Exhibit's marked for identification. Thank you. Now, I probably should have said this at the top. My name is Deposition Leader here, and I am a staffer with Jim Jordan's staff, the House Judiciary Committee. Now, I'll have the other staffers in here introduce themselves, starting with my colleague, so-and-so. I'm here. And I'm here with Jim Nadler. Oh, Jerry Nadler, the waddler, the guy with the diaper, walking around, waddling around. Someone needs to change him. It's been this way for 35 years. He's been in Congress. Intern with the Democratic staff. We've got Chairman Jordan's staff. Jordan. And just for the record, Mr. Wade, would you please state your name for the record? Nathan Wade says. Nathan Wade. And you're joined here with two lawyers. I'll have them introduce themselves. Mr. Evans, he says, counsel for Wade. Roy Barnes says, Roy Barnes here, counsel for Nathan Wade. Depo guy, leader says. All right, I'll now go over the ground rules in accordance with the House rules. Of course, our questioning will proceed in rounds. We're going to ask questions for the first hour. Then the Democrats will ask questions. Are there feds in my red marker? What happened? The feds interfere with my marking. Oh, gosh. Nathan Wade's probably back there in the tubes. Now, I'll now go over the ground rules and guidelines that we're going to follow during today's deposition. Now, we're ordinarily going to take a short break. And Nathan, we'd just like to let you know, we'd like to make your experience here as comfortable as possible under these circumstances. He's like, well, that sounds good. Thank you. Now, as you can see, there's an official House reporter taking down everything we say. So please give verbal responses. Do you understand, Nathan? I do. And please speak clearly. Now, by law, you are required to answer questions from Congress truthfully, Nathan. Do you understand that? I do. Now, this applies to questions propounded by congressional staffers in a setting like that. Do you understand that? I do. Now, you cannot provide false testimony. Do you understand that? I do. And you can't lie. Do you understand that? Yes, I do. And is there any reason, Nathan, why you're unable to provide us with truthful answers here today? No reason. All right. Well, guess what? The federal rules of all the different areas of law don't apply today because this is a House deposition. And so a witness's attorney may not instruct you to refuse to answer a question unless it's a constitutional privilege for some reason. Now, before we begin, we'll afford the lawyers an opportunity to offer any preliminary remarks. Defense attorney for Nathan, Mr. Barnes, and Mr. Evans both jump in. They're like, wait a minute. Before Nathan makes any preliminary remarks here, the common law privileges do apply no matter what the rules say. Your House rules can say this, but my rules say this. And you cannot force a witness to violate the rules of professional responsibility. Lawyer number 2 is like, yeah, and there's a Supreme Court case on that. And you're aware, Mazur's case. John Roberts talked about this, and so we'll assert this, all covered by privilege. And if you do, and Mr. Barnes says, and you can do it. And that's the reason they have the judges. But a ruling, and then Mr. Evans jumps in. He says, and by the way, I've also read Rule 11 times. And so it goes back to the depo guy. He's like, all right. Okay, well, I mean, we've never dealt with an objection on that ground before, says the depo guy leading this. Okay, so it's exactly how I made it sound is probably exactly how it sounded. Okay, as a tag team by the two of them. It's like this dude who's like Jim Jordan staffer's like, the hell did you just say to me? What? And so I don't know. We've never dealt with an objection on this before. Well, you're dealing with Fani land. It's bizarro world over there. But just so we're all clear, if you're not going to answer questions, there's nothing we can do to make a witness. And the lawyer says, yeah, no, I understand. But I don't want to mislead by, after making your statement, not telling you what our position is. He says, okay, well, she's like, okay, well, don't answer it. Like, if you don't want to answer it, then don't answer it. Okay. And so, I can't force you to answer anything. All right. So don't answer it then if you don't want to answer it. And so the way the process would work is we'd confer with the chairman, Jordan, I guess, get a ruling, advise you of the ruling, give you an opportunity to answer if you do challenge this. And then from there, the committee would proceed to contempt, like answer it or don't, but we'll take it up to Jim and then we'll hold you in contempt if we need to. And the lawyer says, well, sure. Well, then we'd be entitled to a jury trial in D.C. And so he says, well, no, not a jury trial in D.C. It's a contempt hearing in the House is what he says. Lawyer says, well, you can't enforce anything. What are you going to do about it? He says, do you have a jail? Wow. Nathan Wade's lawyer. What are you going to do? Congress? You can't enforce anything. You have a jail? No, we're not going to put anyone in jail over this. I mean, the House does have inherent contempt powers. Yeah, well, the only power you have is by criminal contempt, and you're entitled to a jury on criminal contempt, but we do not need we do, under the rules, have a provision, with a contempt citation. We can go to court on civil. We can go the civil route, or the House can proceed via criminal contempt citation, whichever way you want to go. Yeah, sure, but both of those are going to be overseen by a federal judge, and we're here in D.C., and they know that D.C. is their jurisdiction. Totally rigged, so who cares? He says, by a federal judge. House says, yeah, indeed. And the lawyer says, yeah, and if we're in a federal judge, we're going to be bound by the federal rules of evidence, too. Indeed, he says. We can make a criminal referral. He says, sure, to the Justice Department. He goes, Justice Department. They're behind this too. Or in fact, we could just end up deciding to do nothing, which is more likely what's going to happen, of course, because of Congress. Barnes, the lawyer, says, well, you and I are not going to settle it, okay? But I just want to make sure that I was candid with you and tell you what our position is. He says, okay, fair enough. And in the spirit of that, other lawyer says, we've got largely categories of questions. Biographical questions you could ask him, like talk about his, how amazing he is. He can talk about that. But there's other categories of conversations that he had with House committees that we're not going to answer. And he says, okay, well, and so I hope we can work through some of those because to the extent that there were communications with other House committees, if you're not going to provide the content of those communications with other House committees, we would hope that you would provide the date and the individuals involved, because that certainly wouldn't be protected by the privilege. You can tell us that the conversation happened, but not what's in it. The lawyer says, well, no. I don't want to provide that. I mean, there are public records of some dates, but I'm not going to jeopardize the privilege. So I know you guys have invoices and stuff, but we're not going to get into those things. Now, right. So, but just so we understand, I mean, if we're talking about a communication, this is Congress, that's privileged, the fact that the communication occurred is not privileged. The fact that person A spoke to person B, at the level of a privilege log, we certainly would believe we're entitled to all that information. Lawyer says, all right, yeah. Okay, great. So we're good. All right. Any other opening remarks? I know there were some letters exchanged. Anything here? You have an interest in making those letters part of the record? Nathan's lawyer says, no, they're going to be made part of the record. Yeah, we are. We've marked them. Can I? Someone says, of course. Yeah. Can I take a look? Okay, it'll take me 2 seconds, says this person. And now I don't know who this is because apparently, all right. It's always good to be reminded that this person says, it will only take me 2 seconds. Can I make? Yeah, of course. It's always good to be reminded that we don't have a jail in the house. So I just wanted to make a couple notes for the record. Now, first of all, thank the witness for joining us. Especially, I understand that you have a hurt ankle, Nathan Wade, probably from playing pickleball on another cruise. So thank you for traveling up here with an injury, among other things. Now, the buzzer went off, and I think everyone kind of perked up. That's just the House bell, so don't worry about that. There's proceedings on the House floors. I think they're probably done for the day. And then I wanted to make a couple notes. Now, we continue to have concerns about the videotaping of these proceedings, primarily because there's not been copies given to Democratic staff or members. I understand we are able to go view them in the majority's office suite, but that's not the same, especially with members not here because of, well, we're in recess. And when we are provided copies of these, okay, there's not really enough time. Some Republican responds, that's not true. I mean, you get a week. If we're going to release any video, we give it to you 1 week before we put it out. Democrat, somebody says, well, we've had a number of instances where we got them the day before. That's inaccurate. Someone else, that's inaccurate. No, we can go back and check the record. I still would argue that a week is, hey, wait, be careful with the video. I mean, the video agreement is, okay, I appreciate that you want to talk over me, okay, but can I please finish my statements? I'm not trying to talk over you. I'm just trying to, but you literally are talking over me. So if I can finish my statement, then I'll give you the time back. Sound good? So we continue to have concerns with the video, as I was saying. We also continue to have concerns with the transcripts. I think there's been something like 135 depositions and transcribed interviews to date. The vast majority have not been released, including depositions and transcribed interviews back to 23. So that's over a year ago. Now, for the transcripts that have been released, a number of them have not been included, including the Oversight Committee, corrected errata, and so other things. And now we're fighting over transcripts and evidence. Now, this is a problem on both sides, by the way. I would love to have all of the J6 evidence released, all of it, but we don't have it. They deleted it. And they deleted it before they handed it over to the Republicans. So because this is a thing, I think there's something like 40 transcribed interviews. So now it's just Congress people bickering. Nathan and his lawyers are like, this is just great. This is perfect. Just let them bicker it out for as long as this can go. All right. Anything else on the documents and the transcripts? We get the transcripts quickly, okay? We'll get them over to you enough. So finally, they're back and forth. All right, now that's what we've done in other interviews. The deposition transcripts are ready to go almost immediately. Okay, says the lawyer. Nathan Wade chimes in. So question, just a point of clarification. Yeah, Nathan, of course, what's up? He says, prior to the release of the transcript, my counsel will have the opportunity to review it before it's released. Nathan Wade's a little nervous here. We can see it before it goes public, because I might have to text Fani, Listen, baby, hey, I'm going to get your favorite dinner on the way home tonight. You know that sushi place you love? Yeah, getting some Grey Goose too. So we're going to go out tonight. We're not going to, don't check your phone, all right? Of course, Nathan Wade says, now tell me what released means. What do you mean when release it, Nathan? He's very confused. Like, where does it go? Great question. So Nathan's doing his testifying shtick again. Released like a bird? Well, he says, normally we just put it on our website. Oh, all right. All right. Now, if there's anything in the transcript you don't want, You can tell us. You can seek a redaction. We consider it. If it's personal information, we honor it. And this other guy chimes in, well, maybe you won't release it to Fox News this time. He says, well, I don't know how that happens if it goes to Fox News. He says, well, it did happen. You released it to Fox. He says, well, I don't know which one you're talking about. It was one of the impeachment transcripts. All right, well, I don't recall, okay? It was one of the U.S. attorneys who were interviewed by them. All right, well, all right. Pipe down. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. All right, finally. All right. Do you have any more questions? No? All right, shut up. All right. Do you have an opening statement you'd like to offer, Nathan? He says, I do. Nathan Wade testifies to Congress. He says the following. Good morning. My name is Nathan Wade. I'm a licensed attorney in good standing in Georgia, which is incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I am here voluntarily, after accepting subpoena from the House of Representatives. I'm here of my own volition, having paid for my own flight tickets and hotel room in an effort to respond to any inquiries. Probably funneled through those taxpayer dollars into his bank account for legal work that was not earned. He says, please note all arrangements were made per agreement for my voluntary testimony to take place back in July, but you guys had to reschedule me. Now, you're aware I served as special assistant district attorney in the case of Fani versus Trump. Prior to this, I served as a prosecutor several times during my career. I began my private practice in 2000. I was a criminal defense attorney, tried many felony cases. Many cases garnered media attention. Also was a civil attorney, and I gave no attention to partisan politics. I've previously represented a Republican sheriff. I've also served as legal counsel for NAACP. Now, in 2010, I began serving as a judge in several cities in Georgia. I was invited to training. I received dozens of accolades at that training and apparently an introduction to Fani. But he got a bunch of accolades. Now, my team and I investigated the issues of election interference. He says, this case was not politically motivated. Rather, it was an independent investigation based upon facts and evidence. I had no mandate other than to seek honesty and the truth. I was never directed or ordered to do anything. I took my job seriously. No one at the White House or White House lawyer's office or the DOJ or Liz Cheney's committee or anyone forced me to bring an indictment against Trump. So what we did is impaneled the grand jury and presented the evidence. Following this recommendation, charges were brought. In trial court, after they tried to disqualify me, I testified and was cross-examined for hours by defense lawyers. And the motion to disqualify was denied. Kind of. You got booted. You were disqualified. Fani was allowed to hang around. Now, in its distasteful dicta, and dicta, this is a Fani case, so I want to make sure we're clear about this. It's not like normal. Well, anyways, we'll just leave that there. You can fill in. I have so much I could say. We'll just be good. Dicta means stuff that is not essential to the holding. It's a legal term of art that means the holding said one thing and a judge talked about something else, but it's irrelevant to the ultimate decision. All right, that's what dicta means. I wouldn't say it like Nathan Wade dicta, talking about Fani Willis or something like that, But he says, it was distasteful, kind of like a noxious odor, The court opined that either I resign or Fani resign from the prosecution of the election interference case. I don't think it was dicta. Consequently, I voluntarily submitted my resignation immediately. Since that date, I've had minimum contact with the office of Fulton County, with the office. But there's still a lot of dicta going on at Fani's household. How do we speculate about that? Well, because he showed up when Fani's daughter got arrested on the side of the road. he had just finished having some dicta with Fani that night. Now, on May 9th, I received a letter from this committee on the judiciary requesting that I produce 6 categories of documents, and so I voluntarily complied with that. I had nothing responsive to the documents because he left the office. I don't have it. I left it all there. The committee's stated purpose in requesting those documents was to consider legislative changes. You also said you're going to increase statutory rights to go after bad prosecutors. So Wade says, look, I'm here to cooperate. Contrary to any fabricated story that I somehow evaded service of process, I voluntarily reached out to the U.S. Marshals and suggested a place and time where we could meet. Through false inflammatory media reports that he learned that Congress was trying to serve me. As soon as I found out about it, I went and sought a meeting with them. Yeah, right. Now, you are aware that I am bound by the Georgia Rules of Conduct and I must maintain attorney-client privileges. And now I've been served with this letter, which will serve as guardrails directing my responses. And I'll read this letter to you, provide it as an exhibit. Okay, so then he reads Fani's letter, and Fani says, shut your mouth, honey, or you're sleeping on the couch tonight. He says, this is a letter sent to me by my lover, Nathan, Fani. He's Nathan. And so we already read this letter, okay? We're going to fast forward through this because we've already here. So, and here's what Fani said. Remember, you work for me. It's your responsibility. Don't say anything. It's privileged. We're going to seek an agreement with the committee, and I don't believe you have any information that's new, and so I'm confident that you're going to zip your lips, buddy boy, or you're busted. They say, okay, thanks for reading that. We already got it. Just put it in the exhibit. Someone says, well, what was the date of that? What exhibit? Exhibit 2? You have a copy? Okay, yeah. And we also have a letter to the governor. Do you have a date to that, governor? Yeah, it urges the chairman. So the governor, Roy Barnes, sent a letter back over to Jim Jordan. And I think we read that here. We did. And yeah, we did. I think read that here. And Jim Jordan was told to seek anger management by Roy Barnes. And Barnes says, yeah, I hope he has. Hope he's gotten his anger management training. And so Jim Jordan is just getting abused here, man. I wonder if he has any power to do anything about this. I don't know. So Nathan Wade is sworn in. Do you solemnly declare and affirm under penalty of perjury, Nathan, that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Now, in my opinion, Nathan Wade lied on the stand multiple times when he was there with Fani Willis, as did she. So I don't have a lot of credence that he'll... And did he say I do? As far as I can tell, he hasn't. Did he even say I do? Or do you solemnly declare and affirm under penalty? Like, transcripts are supposed to be verbatim, aren't they? That's why we have them. That the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. No, he just sat there. No. The clock now reads 10:35. Now the majority staff will begin an hour of questions by this person. They just move on. Good morning, Mr. Wade. Guy doesn't even agree. I think I have to read that as that's intentional, or it's an errata. It's a mistake. No. So good morning, Mr. Wade. Yeah, this has to be a name, and this has to be another name from the majority staff. I was looking to see, why would they redact I do in there? Anyways, I want to start off by talking a bit about your professional background. How many years have you been a practicing lawyer? Nathan says, since 1999. And you're still licensed to practice in Georgia. Is that correct? That's correct. Yeah, they're not going to disbar me. What are you, nuts? Is that the only jurisdiction that you're currently barred in? It's a female asking questions. Yes, ma'am. And so it's been about 25 years. Can you provide an overview of the previous positions you've held? He says, well, yeah, let me refer back to my statement here. It's great. Thank you again. Another bio. Yeah, private 2000, civil attorney, municipal judge. Okay, so you said in 2000 you started your private practice. Would that be the law offices of Nathan J. Wade? Yes, ma'am. And do you still practice under that moniker, under that name? I do. So you said your practice is focused on criminal offenses, but you've also worked on the civil side. Is that correct? It's not focused on criminal defense, but I've done them both. Yes, ma'am. If you had to characterize a primary focus for your years of practice, what would that be? Today, more civil, more civil. Was it in the past more criminal? In the past, it has been, yes. And are you currently just practicing under the law offices of Nathan J. Wade? Yes, ma'am. Are you employed by any other private law firms? No, ma'am. Defense attorney says, I know where this is going. I think he's going to need clarification on what that means. Someone else jumps in. Do you provide services to any other private law firms? Am I co-counsel at times with cases with other law firms? Nathan says, absolutely. Are you currently under a contract with any other private law firms? No, ma'am. Are you under any sort of joint partnership with any other law firms? No, ma'am. No, ma'am. We're talking, Mr. Evans says, we're talking about right now. Okay, so it's just I think it's a bad transcript. Again, I get so sick of this garbage. We're talking about what right now? It's just a bad transcript. And so you can see how they even switched here from Q's, right? Now we swapped over here. So Q to A. So I don't know who is doing these transcripts. We've seen it before. It's like, I'd like to know what the names were. Why can't we know the congressional names? Or give us something, right? It's just, you can't dissect it because it's all just blobs. As we were seeing earlier, who's asking the questions? How is it? Anyways, let's see what we've got. We're talking about right now. Correct, sir. What? Okay. Another person asks questions. Are you contracted to provide any services to any government entities? Currently, no, ma'am. When was the last time that you were contacted with a government entity to provide services? When I was contacted by my lover, Fani. And prior to your appointment these won't be verbatim reads. And prior to your appointment as a special prosecutor for Fulton, had you been contracted with any other government entity to provide services? Yes, ma'am. Which ones were those? Well, I told you, Cobb County Sheriff, yeah. And City of Marietta, Municipal Judge, City of Roswell, Oswell. Well, I want to talk to you about, in your opening statement, about various correspondence that you've had, Nathan, that you and your counsel have had with the committee. And so we first requested your transcribed interview May 9th via letter. Did you get that letter of this year? Repeat the question, ma'am. So the committee said, we sent you a letter on May 9th. Did you receive that letter? Defense attorney, is that marked as one of the exhibits? It's not marked as one of the exhibits, says somebody. It's a subpoena and so. Well, I can read from the letter. Here's what it says. I'm not asking if you remember receiving the letter. I'm just asking if you remember it, not if you remember what's in it. Did you remember receiving it? Nathan says, well, I don't recall receiving. I do recall receiving a series of letters, but I don't recall the dates nor the contents of those letters. Just a letter from Congress, whatever. Recall the dates. Okay, so here we go. I don't recall. If you want to keep track at home, probably going to be, 100. Let's see. And when did you first seek to schedule your transcribed interview, if you can remember? I don't recall. That was a communication between my attorney and whomever he was communicating with. And so originally your transcribed interview was scheduled for late June. As you said in your opening statement, the committee needed to reschedule, right? Lawyer jumps in. Which letter are we talking about? He says September. Okay. The first sentence of the letter said, come here. Do you remember being informed by your lawyer that you would be at a transcribed interview on September 18th? Do you remember this? Nathan says vaguely. Had you made any travel arrangements to come here for the September meeting? Yes. And you ultimately did not appear, right, in September 18th. Is that right? Well, I want to make certain, says Nathan, that I'm answering as it relates to the proper letter. There were so many letters back and forth that I don't want to mislead you. So let me be clear, says Nathan. The preparation to come for the July time frame, that was agreed upon. So I did prepare to do that. And I believe that was the question you just asked me, right? Well, I asked you about your September 18th transcribed interview and the reschedule. Did you make any travel arrangements for that interview? For the 18th? Yes, the 18th. No. And you ultimately did not come on the 18th. Is that correct? Is that the subpoena that I was given on that date? No, sir. Okay, so he's playing dumb now. If you look at the September 21st letter, which is part of exhibit number 1, Nathan's flipping around through the papers. Well, I don't have a September. He says this one. He says, well, that says October 2nd. He says, okay, so here, it's the September 21st letter. I'm looking at the second paragraph, Nathan. It's right here. It says, you've ignored us for 2 months. Then we informed you. So in reading that, I'm asking you, Nathan, I read this back to you. Did you appear for your September 18th interview? Based on what I just read. He says, well, based upon what you just read, it sounds like I was not. That there were ongoing communications and negotiations and I wasn't required to appear. Well, and so based upon your failure to appear, then we sent you a subpoena. Now, when did you first learn, Nathan, that the committee was issuing you a subpoena for your testimony? He said, I had played in a community basketball league and hairline fractured my ankle. Okay, so it wasn't pickleball, it was basketball. Because of that, I was in and out of ortho surgery centers. Now, I was obviously prescription medicating because of the pain and the swelling in my ankle. So he's too drugged up. And to date, it's still swollen. So at times I may have to elevate it to keep my swelling down. He's like putting his foot up on the label right here. Look, check this out. But I took a few days to take care of my fractured ankle and to prepare for a mediation and an arbitration. Nathan says, when I was able to deal with the pain without the assistance of prescription pain medication, and I came to, he was delirious. Oh man, I wish we were watching this testimony. This story, it's like a bedtime story. I turned on my cell phone and I prepared to go and exercise down in my exercise room. As soon as his medication, he's going to go exercise again. Now, when I did that, messages started to ring through all of a sudden. And one of the messages was from a U.S. Marshal identifying himself and leaving a phone number. Oh my gosh. I'm wanted. I'm a wanted man. I called that gentleman back. And at this point, it's like 4 a.m. because I rise at 4 a.m. to do my exercise regimen. Now, he answered the phone. He's like, Jocko. And I said to him, I understand that apparently I am missing, he said. I've seen reports that no one can find Nathan Wade. I'm here. Who is looking for me? The marshal then said to me, sir, that is ridiculous. Okay. We know that you're not trying to hide or evade service. And I said, what service? And he said, I have something here to serve for you from Congress. And I said that I tell you what, I can meet you now, or we can designate a time and a place. He said, no problem. He said, but that subpoena was for today. I said, well, he said, I don't think I'll need to serve that upon you, but let me get some clarification and I'll call you back. We hung up the phone. 8:39 a.m., he called me back. He said, Mr. Wade, I'll need to go ahead and leave those papers with you. Where are you going to be? What time would you be there? I said, I'll tell you, I'll meet you at my office. I hadn't been to my office in quite some time because he was in hiding. Over a week, I hadn't been there. Now I'll be there and I'll meet you and you can give me what you need to give me, he said. Thank you. We hung up the phone. Maybe 45 minutes to an hour later, he walks through the door, shook my hand, handed me the documents, walked away. Okay, and was your attorney authorized to accept service of a subpoena on your behalf from the committee? He said, I hadn't spoken to my attorney at that point, but previous to the subpoena. Nope, we had no conversation about him accepting anything on my behalf, so he didn't. So you said that you had never spoken to your attorney about accepting service on your behalf, is that correct? We had no conversation about him accepting service of any kind on my behalf. Okay, so again, did he say do not accept service or rejecting service, right? You can be sneaky on it. I don't know. Now, on September 21st, as Blank noted in his opening remarks, he emailed you a copy of the subpoena. Did you receive that email? Who emailed me? This guy. Oh, I don't know. I don't recall receiving an email, says Nathan. But if he says he sent it, I'm sure he did. He seems to be an honest man, says Nathan. Ugh. Now, are you aware that on the same day prior to sending you that subpoena, Blank also attempted to send the subpoena to your attorney? Were you aware of that? No. So did you have any communications with your attorney on September 20th when the subpoena was authorized? I'm not looking for content of discussion, just yes or no, sir. Did you have any contact with my attorney? Oh, he says, do I have contact with my attorney? Constantly, of course. I mean, now look, and a lawyer jumps in. That goes to conversations we've had, okay? I would tell him not to answer that question. Right now we're talking about talking to your attorney. He's like, it's getting a little close for my comfort. And my questions are, did he talk through Fani? Okay, did the lawyers talk to Fani and then Nathan talked to Fani? So yes, he did not talk to his lawyers about service. He talked to Fani, and then Fani talked to the lawyers about it, right? Now, we're just looking for whether a conversation occurred, not the content, just a yes or no. He says, well, conversations that he has with me are privileged, okay? So I'm going to tell him not to answer that, yeah. So did you have a conversation with your attorney ever about the subpoena? Question. He says, that's content. He says, yeah, don't answer that, okay? Someone else jumped. No, you can't talk. Did we ever have a conversation about the subpoena? He says, yeah, I'm going to instruct him not to answer that. You're asking him what we talked about. Did you have any conversations with your attorney? He says, same thing. I'm just looking for a yes or no. He says, no, same thing, same objection. On the 23rd, you talked to him? No. Same objection. Don't answer it. Don't answer it. Did you talk to Fani Willis about a subpoena? Would be a good question in here. Shove that in there. So on September 23rd, that was the first time that the marshals attempted to serve you in person. Were you aware that they attempted to serve you in person on September 23rd? Well, I think I just shared my experience on what happened. Okay, so your testimony is that you turned off your phone because you had fractured your ankle. Is that correct, sir? No, ma'am. No. My testimony was that I turned off my phone to prepare for an arbitration and mediation that was upcoming, along with nursing my ankle back to health. So I sort of, when I go into trial mode, says Nathan, when I'm preparing for trial, I shut the world off. But what about Fani? Does he have a secret phone with her? My job is to handle my client's business, and I don't want any outside interference. So I had no contact with anyone during the course of that preparation. So what date did you turn your phone off? Well, I turned it off. The exact date, I can't recall. I'd give it to you if I could. I can't recall the exact date. So did the phone, if we requested your phone records for September 20th to the 26th, will we find that your phone was off and you had no communications via your cell phone? He said, well, I don't know what date it was shut off, but during the course of that period, you will find no communications because the phone was off. And so what happened first? The phone being turned off or you hurting your ankle? He said, well, I hurt my ankle first. Okay. And so between that time, you said you turned your phone on then at 4 a.m., then on September 26th, and that's when you received the messages from the marshals. Is that correct, or did I mix this up? He says, I don't recall. I do recall the marshal saying, this is a subpoena, and I turned my phone on and I called him right back. So on the second attempt to serve the subpoena in person on September, the marshal spoke to a work crew that was doing some landscaping work at your house. Are you aware of those conversations that occurred? You're referring to the second attempt, right? What's the first attempt? Well, the marshals made several attempts to serve Wade the subpoena. In person, they did, says the defense lawyer. In person, yeah, they did. That's correct. When was the first attempt? First was the 23rd, Monday. And the second attempt was when? The 24th. Lawyer says, okay. Okay, so on the 24th is the date they spoke with your landscaping. Are you aware they spoke to the landscapers? No, Nathan says. No. And I'm shocked that the marshals never mentioned to me that they had come to my home. And I had no conversation with anyone doing any landscaping around my property at that time either. Can't believe it. And on September 24th, Nathan, they also attempted to serve you in person at your law office. Are you aware of that? I am not. During the course of that conversation, the marshal did say to me that he stopped by my law office and the paralegal or receptionist told him I was not there. And the marshals represented to the committee that the paralegal told the marshals that you were out of town until October 2nd. Do you remember that? They said, no, he's gone. Is that an accurate statement? Were you out of town, Nathan, until October 2nd? He says, I don't know what they would have shared with them. I don't know. Well, and then you said at 4 a.m. to the 26th, and you reached back out to the marshals. Is that correct? I did. And you did that via phone call? I did. And then you accepted service on the 26th on that date. On the morning? Whatever that morning was, yes. And then on October 2nd, the committee issued another subpoena, and you accepted service of that one, right? Is that correct? He says, so because at this point, I had contact with the marshal via cell phone. That same gentleman called me. He said, Mr. Wade, I have another document for you, and how can I get it to you? I said, well, when do you want to get it to me? And he said, as soon as possible. I told him at that point, I'm on my way to court. He can meet me at the courthouse. He's like, here's where I'm going, and here's the time that I'll be there. And he said, okay, I'll show up there. I'll hand you the documents. And he did that. Okay, so now I want to pivot now, says the questioner, to talking about your appointment as special prosecutor for Fulton County Attorney's Office. So who contacted you first about the special prosecutor position? Nathan says, well, gosh, who contacted me to go prosecute Trump? Well, this is an interesting story or series of events, how this came about, says Nathan. And forgive me, Governor Barnes, I'm going to have to tell you on here. I'm going to have to tell on you here. There you go. He says, that's fine. You won't be the first. Because remember, Roy Barnes was also considered for this position, allegedly. Nathan says, well, I was part of the search committee, if you will, for the then newly elected district attorney, Fani. Question comes from this person. Okay. Can you provide the dates for when you were part of the search committee? Oh, God, I cannot. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, if it's helpful, Fani came into her office, January 21. Is that helpful for a time frame? January 21. He says it is. Yeah, it's helpful. Okay, so January 1st, I was part of the search committee for that newly elected Fani. We were tasked with trying to identify someone who would be lead counsel on election interference investigation. Wow, that's incredible. So on January 1st, I was part of the search committee. So the question is, did this happen before she took office, right? She comes in, she hasn't even looked at any evidence yet, and she's already establishing a committee to prosecute Trump, almost like it's part of her campaign. The goal or the trick was to make certain that the individual selected or identified was one who had no axe to grind, the special counsel, who can be objective. There are about 3 to 5 candidates, a few of them which I cannot recall, but there are a multitude of individuals. One of them was Roy Barnes, my lawyer right here. I happen to love that guy. He, I guess, artfully bowed out because safety, he would cite low financial compensation. He says, I'm busy and I get paid too much. Now I should have taken the hint when he said that, says Nathan, but I did not. I didn't understand what he understood, apparently. I had no clue that I would need security for accepting that position. But at any rate, he was the one that turned that position down, says Nathan. Other people turned it down too. Eventually, I guess the committee turned their guns on me and started trying to convince me to accept the role, the committee that he's on. I said no. I said no more than once. But at some point, I relented and I accepted the case because it did pose some interesting legal issues, like dicta. I was unlike any concept or anything that I'd ever dealt with. Yeah, because it's never happened before. As a matter of fact, it turns out it's unlike anything that's ever happened in American history. So I was right in that regard. Yeah, because you guys breached 234 years of American historical precedent. Good job. Now, he says, I didn't give enough credence, though, to the underlying warnings that were issued to me by former Governor Barnes. And so the search committee, you said, began when Fani took office on January 1st. Is when you started searching? Yes. And was there outreach to you to be a part of this search committee before January 1st? Oh, absolutely. And when did that start? Sometime after the election, but before she took office. Okay, so between the election, and you're referring to the November 2020 election, is that right? Yes, ma'am. And so when you had conversations with individuals, you said on multiple occasions that you said no, and you turned the positions down. Were those conversations, who were those with? Well, they were mostly with Fani. Lawyer says, I'm going to start objecting soon because now we're talking about him working with her now, and she says you can't talk about that. So you said that you had conversations with Fani prior to your appointment as the special prosecutor, right? So before you were like, now we're part of the privilege protection of her office, right? Let's talk about that. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. So you talked about the role itself, right? Yes. Did you have any interviews with Fani regarding the position? Nathan Wade nails it. Define interview. What does this mean? Says Nathan. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We had multiple interviews. Repeatedly. She says, like a job interview, for crying out loud, where you sat down with Fani and she talked about your job qualifications, okay? The role of the special prosecutor, like why you would be the best fit for the position. It writes itself. I can't help what's in the transcript. Was there any sort of discussion like that? He's like giggling like a schoolgirl. He's like, you better believe I was the best fit for Fani. You better believe it. He's like fist bumping his attorney. He's like, yeah, baby, show was. Yeah. It was more of a conversation, sort of making me aware of my background and accomplishments, if you will. So if that's an interview, then that's what it was. But it was more of her and her counsel at the time just kind of reminding me like, well, you've done this and you've done that and you've done this and you've done that. Could I just ask, are we talking about him serving as the special prosecutor or him serving on the search committee? And people are like, I don't know. Or what? Or serving in some other capacity? I'm talking about the appointment as the special prosecutor. Okay. And so how many conversations, if you had to quantify, do you believe you had with Fani before you were hired as her dicta? I have no clue, ma'am. Was it more than 5? Was it more than 10? I have no clue. It was a lot. More than 1? Oh, absolutely. Did you have any conversations with anyone else besides Fani regarding your role? And Governor Barnes, I'll say. I did. And I'm trying to recall if that was this person. And who is this person? Well, he's the individual that I had the conversation with prior to my being appointed, if you will, as special prosecutor. Did he work in Fani's office? Well, at the time she didn't. She hadn't taken office yet. Okay, so you spoke with this woman prior to Fani taking office. Is that right? Yes, I did. Okay, any other individuals besides this person, Governor Barnes or Fani, that you talked about the position with? Well, I'm sure there were. I just can't recall who else I talked to. Okay, well, I'm going to mark another exhibit. This is Judge McAfee's order. And we're going to use this as an exhibit. You can review it. You want to review this order? He says, I'm good to go. I've seen it. Now, in your opening statement, Nathan, you referred to distasteful dicta, the legal term, not what happened with Fani. Is this what you were referring to, this order? He says, yeah, portions of it. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Well, I want to look specifically at page number 1. The sentence starts with among other. Do you see it? I'll read it into the record. It says, among other allegations of disqualifying conduct, the defendants contend that Fani, so that's Trump and the defendants, they say that Fani obtained a personal stake in the prosecution of this case by financially benefiting from her dicta with Nathan Wade, whom she personally hired to lead the state's prosecution team. Yeah. Now, I'm just wondering if you could help us unpack what the judge said when he said personally hired. What does that mean? Would you describe that as DA Willis having conversations with you? Did she give you the job offer? Can you help us understand what personally hired means? Whom she personally hired is what McAfee said. Objection calls for speculation. All right. Well, did you receive a job offer from Willis? Well, if you're asking, Nathan, if you're asking me to interpret what this judge was meaning when he made those statements, I couldn't do it for you. I don't know. So would you say the fact that his statement that she personally hired you he said that, would you say that's inaccurate? Lawyer jumps in. Well, you're asking what Nathan's understanding of a judge is, and he had no way to know what McAfee said by that. Well, I'm asking if he believes that statement that he was personally hired, if that was accurate. Well, you're asking him, let me just, to his understanding. To your understanding, Nathan, is that accurate? He says, aside from what he wrote in this order, I can tell you that the only person who had the authority to appoint me as special prosecutor was Fani. That's who had the authority to make the appointment. Aside from whatever the process was, ultimately she had the authority. So when you received a job offer or a contract from Fulton County, were those discussions had with Fani? He says, wait, that's too broad, lawyer says. Are you asking about specific things or what? Let me tighten it up, she says. When you were retained by Fani's office, you would agree that you were retained by her office. Is that correct? I would agree with that. When you were retained by Fani, who did you have conversations with? Well, I had conversations upon being retained, and contracting with Fani's office with this person. And what was this person's role with Fani's office? I don't know what the exact title he has was. And what did you discuss with this person? Was it just the maneuvers of the contract, or were there specifics? Of what? Well, he said that he had conversations with blank regarding his retention, so I'm asking in what regards? Was it your conversation about the specifics of the contract? Was it about the rate you would be given per hour? Nathan says all of the above. Okay. And did you have any of those types of conversations with Fani, or were those just with this dude? Lawyer says, hang on, you got to be more precise. What's the actual question? Congress says, well, the actual question is, we have just discussed that he had conversations with blank about his retention as prosecutor. And he described, he says, he described that he had conversations about the rate. He had conversations with blank about the contract itself. So I'm asking, did he discuss any of those, his rate or his contract with the DA Willis? Lawyer says, okay. Nathan says no. Someone else jumps in with questions. No. Okay, so you just had those conversations with blank. Well, that was his job. His job was to sit with me, hammer out the details of the contract, says Nathan, which were, this is our contract, this is our rate, sign it. So there you go. That's it. And in the judge's order, it states that you were personally hired to lead the state's prosecution team. Is that accurate to describe you as the lead for the prosecution team, now that we've gotten through all that? Nathan says, yes, that's accurate. Finally, gosh. Did you have any discussions with Fani regarding leading the prosecution team? He says, yeah, that's what she hired me to do. Beyond just explaining that you would lead the team, were there any more details provided? Like how many employees you would supervise, if you'd lead a team? Do you have office space? Were there any of those types of conversations? Nathan says, well, there's a contract that's in the public sphere, and that I'm just going to ask that the four corners of that document control, says Nathan. Uh-huh. What? The contract speaks for itself. If you don't have it, I could ask us to give you a copy of it. I know that it was provided in discovery, the copy of the actual contract that was executed. So whatever the details are, it's in there, whatever the contract was. And prior to that contract being sent to you, you discussed it with this guy from Fulton. Now, I believe you said his last name was eliminated. Is that correct? So that's interesting, right? Now, that's the second time we've seen a word omitted. So it looks like they're omitting things instead of redacting things. His last name was what, right? Why is that not in the transcript and just redacted like the rest of these things? So now we've got omissions. Did you have any discussions with Willis of what the job would entail? What else is omitted? It's all in the contract, he says. Did you lead a team of prosecutors? I did. And how many did you? Who were on your team? Nathan says, so let me say this. Those men and women, many of which are not known to the public, there's some safety concerns there. Uh-huh. And I don't think we should really be talking about, someone else jumps in, she didn't ask for names. Nathan looks over to him. Am I responding to you or him? Which one? Nathan's getting mad. Well, he's here. He'll just help out with the objections. I'm sorry, this is a deposition. I think under deposition rules, only one counsel is allowed to ask questions. I didn't ask a question. I just confirmed that she did not ask any names. Well, I think that's a violation of the rules, says someone else. Obviously, you guys are in charge, so you can do whatever you want, but this guy says, it's not a violation of the rules. It's just confirming she did not ask for names. Nathan says, all right, so let me say that there was a team and there was more than one. Okay, Nathan, great. So there was more than one. Did you supervise a team of more than 5 individuals? Yes. Was it more than 10? No. Okay, so it was between 5 and 10. Is that correct, Nathan? That's correct. And were those individuals all barred attorneys? No. Okay. And can you give us a sense of were the individuals, paralegals, secretaries, assistants? What did they look like for the individuals who were not barred attorneys? All of the above. Okay. And how many individuals would you say were barred attorneys? More than 5? I believe yes. Okay. So now we're between 5 and 10, and we've got looks like 5 or 6 lawyers, right? Because 5 or more than 5, so let's call it 6, plus a paralegal. So that's plus 1, plus 1, plus 1. So we got 8 people, 2 people are kind of, or at least 1, it's not 10, it's less than 10. So 9, we got 1 unassigned person. Okay. Now, okay, I want to ask you a little bit about the org structure in this case against President Trump. Our understanding is that you, Nathan, were hired specifically to be a special prosecutor against Trump. Is that correct? There were no other cases that you worked on, Nathan? He says, no, that's not correct. Oh, so you worked on other cases other than just the prosecution and investigation of Trump? You did. Yes, I did. Okay, how many other cases did you work on? I don't know. Well, what types of cases were they? Criminal cases. Criminal cases. What types of crimes? Oh, I don't recall. Were they all in a specific unit or division of Fani's office, like the anti-corruption unit? Were they all in that vein? No, ma'am. And so talking specifically about, so he's like, okay, what did you do? Nothing. And so talking specifically about the investigation and prosecution of Trump, how many attorneys did you supervise? Attorney jumps in, says, wait a minute, now we're getting into their structure, and so we can't talk about this. Fani told us no. And Barnes jumps in, says no, and says, I don't know how bad, I mean, you don't know how bad this has become since Trump brought all this out and Chairman Jim Jordan saying these people are having to move their houses. So don't use names, okay, or anything that could identify any people. Okay, Governor. Questions continue. Now, you said that you supervised the team that was between 5 and 10 people. Is that correct? Yes. And so with those, even though, you know, I believe under the contract, you were limited to 60 hours per month. Is that correct to your recollection? He says, well, I don't recall. It was something, you know, it was awful. And, you know, I believe Fani said, you have both publicly said that you worked more hours than you actually billed for. Is that correct? Absolutely. And so when you were working for Fani's office, you also had your private law firm. And so I just want to specifically focus on Fani. So you supervised a team of 5 to 10 people. Did they reach out to you for guidance? Not specifically, but did they reach out to you? Well, like, can we what kind of guidance are they? Well, like, did they ask, hey, Nathan, can we interview this individual? That's one example. Well, that's too broad. He's not going to know that. Well, his team would. Would the individuals that you supervise, would they ever contact you? He says, no, I'm going to object to all of that. Okay. Confidential. He says, how? It's not about the actual investigation. It's about the structure of the office. How does that impact the investigation at all? He says, well, Governor Barnes already brought this up. You're trying to narrow this down to 5 to 10 people. And so now this could put somebody in jeopardy if people can figure out who these attorneys are. Like, we didn't see them come out and work on the screen. What happened to the attorney? What was her name? Anna? Okay, and how would whether conversations occurred be covered under privilege? Well, you're starting to get into like what they talked about. There's certain specific knowledge. And so it's not a perfect science, they say. I was trying to give you some leeway, but now we're going to start objecting. And the lawyers are hashing it out back and forth again. So now we get back to some questions. Okay. So did you have an office space, Nathan Wade, at Fani's office? Did you have an office there? Nathan asks, did I have a place where I went to complete the work that I was contracted to do with Fulton County? Yeah, that's correct, sir. That's what I asked. Yes, I did. Okay. Why'd you have to repeat it to me? Okay. And was that at the physical address of Fani's office? He says, I cannot for safety reasons disclose where that office was. Okay. Now I'm not asking for the address, but you had a desk somewhere that you completed work with Fani. Is that correct? He says someplace. Mysterious. Someplace. Okay. And did you have an official email address with Fulton County? No. So if someone needed to reach out to you regarding your work with Fani, would they email you on your regular email address? They would email a legal assistant, a paralegal, or one of the other full-time team members to get to me. Okay. And did you have a business card with Fani's office that identified you as a special prosecutor? I did. Of course he did. Why wouldn't he? And did you have a government phone or government phone number where you could be reached to discuss Fulton County business? I did not. Oh, you did not. So would the similar process be he says, okay, well, I'll ask a broad question, some objections by the lawyers. So I'll just ask a broad question then. Did you feel like you were integrated into the day-to-day operations at Fani's office, Nathan? What does integrated mean? Well, did you know people who you were? Did people know who you were? Did you interact with people on a daily basis? Well, most people did not know who I was. Yeah, right. Okay, just the individuals that you supervised on your team, right? They obviously knew who you were. But other individuals at Fani's office, they did not know who you were. Most other individuals at Fani's office did not know my roles, nor have any knowledge of the work that I was doing, because he wasn't doing much work, if you know what I mean. And prior to your appointment, you listed in your opening statement and in the first few questions roles you had when you were another prosecuting lawyer. Is that right? Yes, ma'am. Prior to your appointment as a special prosecutor, had you ever worked in a district attorney's office? No. Never been a prosecutor? And in your opening statement, you mentioned various criminal cases that you'd worked on. You know, capital cases, murder, other cases. Have you ever worked on a RICO case or a racketeering case? Okay, says Nathan. Says, so when you say worked on, are you meaning tried? Because the cases that I mentioned were cases that I actually tried. Okay, so take a step back. Have you ever worked on, not you being the attorney of record on the case, for a RICO case? Are you asking if I've ever participated in the prosecution of a RICO case? Correct. The answer is no. No. So this was the first case that you were prosecuting a RICO case. Is that right, Nathan? Yes. And how did you get up to speed on the contours? Well, obviously RICO is complex, not talking about while you were on the job, but prior to taking the position on. Did you do any study of RICO? He says, I absolutely did. I went to what I would call RICO school to learn about what it is, what it means, how it works. Very complicated legal concept, but dubbed the godfather of RICO, the gentleman who wrote the book, spent hours teaching me RICO, if you will. And beyond that, did you do any other study to prepare yourself for taking on the position as the special prosecutor? Well, I don't know that there's anything greater than sitting at the foot of the person who wrote the book on the concept. Remember, there was another guy, a white guy, who Fani was not sleeping with, who got paid a lot less than Nathan Wade did, who wrote the book on RICO, who wasn't brought on to prosecute this. Instead, she went with her lover. But apparently he learned everything from that guy. There's nothing better than that. And who are you referring to, you say, wrote the RICO book? Oh, John Floyd. They didn't redact his name. Apparently he can get murdered or whatever. That's fine. So John Floyd, I guess the only name in this entire thing, other than the lawyer's names. Incredible. So Mr. Evans, I thought the other prosecutors had to be redacted or else they would die. Didn't Nathan Wade just say that? I can't talk about any of this for security purposes. John Floyd. They put it in here. All right. And that's the only name I want to have you give. There we go, from Evans, right? So he comes out. The only reason I didn't object, he's already part of the public record. Okay. So are the other lawyers who showed up there. And did Mr. Floyd work for the Fani's office, or did you just seek him out? Well, I don't know who he works for. Okay, so he wasn't contracted by Fani's office, to your knowledge? Well, how did you go about contacting Floyd, Nathan? Well, he was teaching a RICO course, and I went to the course. And so when you say you went to RICO school, would that be accurate? You did go to a class about RICO to understand the contours of the law? Absolutely. And during your time as special prosecutor, did anyone supervise you? What does that mean, supervise me? Was there any org chart? Was there anyone above you? Okay, let me ask it this way. In your role as special prosecutor, did you report to Fani? Well, you don't have to answer that if you don't want to. What's the objection? Wait, what? What's the objection? What's the privilege? Lawyer says, again, it's just, look, first of all, I don't see the relevancy to anything having to do with grant funds, which is why we're here. I don't see the relevancy to anything to do stated in the letter about oversight to federal court. So this whole line of questioning is irrelevant. But I want to go back to the original objections. We're getting too much confidential material with the structure stuff. Who's he's reporting to and all this stuff. Yeah, but what's the privilege? You didn't tell me about a privilege. Well, lawyer says, well, the privileges, there's several. I mean, work product privilege, Confidential information, attorney-client privilege, grand jury privilege. He's just like naming off a bunch of stuff. Confidentiality, Georgia rules of prohibited. We got a multitude. He's like, he has a whole list here. He's just reading the list. Okay. All right. And how does whether Willis supervised him fit into any of those? It's just a yes or no question. Well, the contract is public record. And so you're asking about how all this works. And so whatever Willis decided about the hierarchy and how this all works is attorney-client privilege. Well, that wasn't my question. The question was, did Fani supervise him? It's yes or no. So how would that lead to you and to the reporting structure? How would that violate anything? Well, because I don't know what supervise means. That's the problem. Like, did they have conversations and so on? We'll ask a broader question. Okay. I'll ask a broader question. Okay, do you want to talk about Fani? How about this? Did anyone oversee your position as the prosecutor? I already objected to that, says the defense. How do we not know what the word supervise means? She says to them with incredulity. What? Supervise? You guys don't understand what that means? Well, what are we trying to get to here, though? I don't understand, look, we just asked the questions. I mean, yeah. So sometimes when you ask a question, as you know, it leads to other things. But I mean, we're objecting here to the word a supervisor. Is that what your problem is, guys? No, I'm objecting to the conversation as it was explaining about how they got information. She says, no, I didn't ask about how information is passed. I asked who. Did anyone oversee Wade? That's not how information was passed. It's just, did someone oversee you? Yes or no? Did Fani? And he says, sorry, we're getting into too many names, too many identifiable people. Okay, and to make you more comfortable with the question, that's why I took it back. I didn't say Fani. I said, did anyone oversee it? Finally, the lawyer relents. Good for her for staying on that. Finally, okay, did anyone oversee you? You can answer that. Says Nathan Wade. Answer, no. No one oversaw me. So you had ultimate authority in the case, you would say? Yes. And Mr. Barnes has to go pee-pee. He says, yeah, folks, I'm an old man. Eventually, we're going to have to go to the bathroom. Oh, 51 minutes. Okay, we're at minute 51, Governor. We sat down 51 minutes ago. Can you wait for just 9 minutes? Roy Barnes like, okay, I can make it. Let's go. Golly. Okay, so Mr. Wade, it's a matter of public record that you were paid. You received for your services somewhere a little bit over $700,000. And I understand from your testimony at the hearing that there was a structure where it went into a joint account between you and your law partners, and then it was divided among the three of you. But is it accurate to say that you were reimbursed, not you, your law firm, your partnership was reimbursed a little bit over that? He says, reimbursed? Nathan, what? What does that mean? Now, in payment, it's vocab day with Nathan Wade. In payment for your service that you provided to Fani, you got $250 an hour. Is that correct? That was your rate? No, that was not my rate. No, ma'am. But again, the contract is going to control. So whatever the contract says, that's what it was. Now, I'm trying to truncate this here for the record. Now they're objecting again. Okay, so Nathan, look, I understand that you, yourself, you did not receive the full payment. Is that correct? That's correct. And that it was divided among, after expenses were paid, it was divided between you, Bradley, and Campbell. Is that correct? Which is crazy. So he just takes a third, gives the rest to his partners. And Terrence Bradley got some of that money too? Is that right? So that's incredible. You did not receive the full payment of that $700,000 for your services. So did Terrence Bradley, is that part of the reason why Terrence Bradley was such, in my opinion, a liar on the stand? Is it because he was getting money? He got a third of that $700K and he probably spent it, so he didn't have any, he doesn't want to come out of pocket to reimburse those funds, or he might have some criminal liability for himself. Right? Why did Bradley lie on the stand? Again, in my opinion. I don't know. Is there a financial component? It was divided between you. Is that correct? Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so at some point, they also had contracts with Fani, right? They were on the taint team. Is that correct? Yeah, that's correct. Do you have an understanding of when they were contacted regarding those taints? Any idea when that happened? I do not. Did you ever, or were you ever involved in their first appearance contract? When people get arrested, they have a first appearance. Did you go do those? I was not. Were you ever involved in the filter or the taint team contract? I was not. Do you have an understanding of when those contracts ended specifically? No. And was the payment structure similar to yours? Was there a joint account? Well, it would go into an account, and the way you explained it would happen is how it would happen. It would go into a joint account. Expenses were paid. The remainder was then divided amongst the three of you. Okay, so it was not necessarily a joint account. And Fani, and I just want to make sure, were you aware that Judge McAfee has a YouTube channel that recorded the hearing? The lawyer asks the questioner. Correct, yeah, and I watched his testimony, and I watched Willis's testimony, and I watched Bradley's testimony, and Miss Yurdy's testimony. I watched all of that. So did we. Right, okay, the lawyer says, okay, so these questions, these specific questions have already been asked and answered. Okay, under oath, yeah, under oath. He's already answered these questions, and he already testified to these. Yeah, I know. Got it, guys. Thanks for that. Thanks for the two of you. Already got it. Sometimes responses elicit additional questions or new information. So we're just asking the questions here, waiting for his responses. And even if they had already answered, what's the privilege? He says, well, it's not about privilege. Now I'm objecting to general deposition rules. Well, okay, if he doesn't remember, then he doesn't remember. He can just say that. Yeah, but you've already asked him these questions. And someone else says, well, I'll point this out. I will also point out that this case is still on appeal. Yeah, it is. Okay, we're ready to go back. Okay, Nathan. Were you the only special prosecutor to your knowledge that was contacted to work on the case against Trump? Are we good to go? Someone says. Yeah. I was just asking if you could tell us when you pause your timer so we can keep track of time. Okay. Now, to your knowledge, every time those lawyers are interrupting, they're pausing the time. To your knowledge, were there other special prosecutors besides yourself that were contracted to work on the case against Trump and his co-defendants? Yes. And how many others were there? At least two. And were their roles similar to yours? No. How did their roles differ, aside from not sleeping with Fani Willis and being white? Because remember, Fani said that Nathan Wade got singled out because he was a black man. Remember that? She brought it up, not us. They weren't required to spend the amount of time that I was required to spend on the case. They were more as needed. Oh, okay, and when you say that the time you were required to spend on the case, what do you mean by required? Ooh, we got a little topsy-turvy, flipperoo. Well, your earlier question, probably 30 minutes ago, dealt with RICO. And my understanding of the concept, says Nathan, the legal concept of RICO. Well, in order to be certain that I can fully understand the concept, I had to go through training. I was required to make certain I understand how to apply each and every element. I was required to, and she's like, wrap it up. And he says, I'm trying to answer your question. He's filibustering right here. She's like, hey. And without going into now this investigative processes, but we had different requirements. And did you have any knowledge of or any reason to believe that Fani's office paid you with federal funds? Well, that's kind of a misconception that Fulton County and their office paid me anything. Why? Is your next question why? Sure, go ahead. So I'll answer it, says Nathan. Well, I would submit an invoice, many of which you've seen, probably all of which you have. I would submit an invoice, and 3 to 5 or so months later, I would get a physical check from the Board of Commissioners. Okay, so that's who paid me. So I wasn't paid by my lover. Okay. So the DA's office never wrote me a check. They didn't pay me a dime. The Fulton County Board of Commissioners did. It's like, wow, Nathan, wow. Case closed, America. He got him. Now, and when you received the check from the other government board of Fulton, did you ever have knowledge or reason to believe that those funds were derived from federal funds? Yeah, I have no clue how they got the money. I was just more, I guess, astonished by the fact it took me 3 to 5 or 6 months to get it. All right, and we'll talk about the invoices in the next round, so we'll go back to that. But the practice was you would track your time. you would put in an invoice and then you would send that to the Board of Commissioners or send that to Fulton County. Well, I'd send that to payroll and then they would do whatever they wanted to do with it. I would then go to my file, look through my notes, and then I'd get my check. And if you had questions about this, you'd go check your file. Would those questions come from individuals in the payroll office? He says, I don't know where it came from. The questions would come from the email. It was like general Fulton County email. And I would then check the notes. I would hit reply and respond. Okay, so if your invoice was $2,000, and I know that's low, obviously, but if it was for $2,000, because they were normally like for $35,000, would you be paid out $2,000? Sometimes. Okay, when you say sometimes, were there some times when you were not reimbursed? Like, for example, if you invoice for $2,000, would you get $1,500? And now we're off the record. It's potty break time. Governor Roy Barnes needed to go pee-pee. And so we'll take a beverage break. Cheers, my friends. Cheers as we slurp together. Ah, delicious. Now, we can go back on the record. And he says, okay, we're back on the record. Mr. Wade, thanks for being here today. And it's the Democrats asking the questions. Now, you touched on your opening statement, but I'm going to ask some follow-up questions. You said this is not politically motivated. Is that right, Nathan? Yeah, it wasn't politically motivated at all. I have no political motive. I simply did what I said in my opening statement. And you brought these because you're a good person. You believe there was sufficient evidence to prove a crime? Yes, ma'am. And isn't it a matter of public record that several defendants have already pled guilty? Yes. And 3 of them are attorneys. They did plead guilty, but they took diversion deals. First offender rules, their cases will all be dismissed, so they will not be sentenced or convicted of anything in the long run. Now, I want to ask you some questions about the grand jury report. It also recommended charges, these are the Democrats, be filed against Loeffler and Graham and Flynn and Republicans. 39 recommendations. Not going to go through all of them, but you didn't charge these people, right? You actually indicted fewer than half the individuals than who was recommended. Right, Nathan? Did anyone in the Department of Justice, again, Democrats, to your knowledge, force you or direct you to file charges against Trump? Did they try to coerce you? No. Did anybody at the DOJ pressure you? No, ma'am. Did anybody in Fani's office influence you to do this? No, ma'am. Everything was amazing. Now, we spoke briefly at the end of the last hour about funds that were used to pay you. And I want to ask a question related in light of the allegations about federal funds. Do you have any information about how Fulton County uses its federal funds? No, ma'am, I don't. Was that part of your role as special counsel? No. Now, how about this subpoena? You were actually served 5 days after the subpoena was issued, right? Yeah. And you turned your cell phone on, and as soon as you got that, you voluntarily called the marshal back, didn't you? And you showed up and you got the documents. You made arrangements for him to come to you, didn't you, Nathan? Because you're awesome. You met him at the courthouse. Now, I want to talk about safety. Can you talk about safety? He says, yes. I have to live with security around me 24/7, or that's what Roy Barnes said. Now, at a certain point, I had to dump my voicemails every hour because I was getting so many nasty phone calls. My father and I have the same name, so people were coming after him too. And you're concerned about your own safety, right? He says, well, I was concerned for my safety. He says, I had to wear a bulletproof vest in public. And he says, I'm a licensed gun owner. Republicans are going to come back here and wrap this up in a minute. But the Democrats continue. Now we're back on the record. Mr. Wade, when we ended our last hour, I was talking about the invoices you sent. And I want to introduce one of those invoices into the record. And I want to draw your attention to this line. On this invoice, Nathan, it says this item, it says travel to Athens. Do you see where I'm looking, Mr. Wade? I do. Okay. Now it says in this line item, there's headings and the description is travel to Athens, conference with White House counsel. What? The date is completed May 23rd, 2022. Hours billed is 8 hours at $250. Nathan, did I read that invoice correctly? Yeah, you read it correctly. And so this invoice states that you billed 8 hours for travel to Athens and a conference. Is that accurate to say? CONF, conf, is short for conference, or is that confer? What is that short for? Nathan says, well, so accompanying the billing invoices was again investigative notes that would clarify the entries. When I resigned in March, obviously those notes stayed with Fani. So any questions you might have about the invoices are with Fani. And I would need to refer to those notes that I don't have and I haven't seen. Okay, great. So we'll go off your memory then and your recollection. Okay, Nathan. Do you remember meeting, discussing, or conferring in May of 2022 with White House counsel, Nathan? Objection, attorney-client privilege, work product, all the things. He also stated he doesn't remember this stuff, so I'm going to say don't answer that. Pretty important question. Well, I'm going to stop the clock here, says the depo, and say in the last rounds, questions were propounded about, oh, did the DOJ ask you? Did the White House ask you? And he answered, no, no, no. Okay, all the Democrats were asking, did DOJ force you to do it? No. And went through their whole list. We just looked at it. So then it's fair for us to respond to that. They opened the door. When did you speak with? We're not asking for the contents at all. Although I think we're entitled to know what the contents are, I think we're entitled to know about when these things did happen, if they happened, who they were with. Well, he says, I think they're already answered by the invoices. It's got the date right there. It's already public record. He says, well, I do want to clarify on that, though. We did not make any kind to the effect of, did you have conversations? Our questions did not presume the conversations took place. So I just want to make that clarification. Someone else says, right, but on one hand, I mean, when you're asking questions about the questions you asked was, did the DOJ tell you to do boom, boom, boom? The answer is no. So, right, I did not suggest, I have no idea if he ever met with the DOJ or not. I did not mean to presume that he did. Right, so that question naturally leads then, okay, did anyone from the DOJ meet with you? I mean, that's a natural follow-up question. And so we can agree to disagree on the specific communications, on whether they're subject to a privilege that Congress recognizes. I do think it's fair to ask, at a privilege log level, when the communications happened and who they were with. And this is good work here, right? She's fighting back a bunch of people here. Okay, so I think the when is answered by the invoice, says the lawyer. And I think the who they were with that was already answered by a statement about when he doesn't have the notes from those specific dates. Now, I don't know what he could provide that he's not already answered. She says, well, I think it's fair for blank to ask, who was your contact in the White House office? Who did you meet with? When you met with them? Again, she's not going to ask the questions, but when you met with them, where did you meet with them? She says, well, okay, I think our answer is going to be in the notes. It's also in the dates, and so we'll just continue to object. Okay, so she's going to ask what is your recollection of who you met with? If he doesn't have a recollection, she's going to ask is there any way for you to get us that? Maybe the answer is no. All right. And so they're back on. All right, Mr. Wade, now turning back to the invoice, number 8. We're working off the line that says travel to Athens, conf with White House counsel, May 23rd. Do you remember, Nathan, meeting with the White House counsel, May 2022? I don't. You have no recollection of meeting with anyone from the White House counsel's office? I don't. It says travel to Athens. Did the meeting take place in Athens? The invoice says travel to Athens. So that means to me that I traveled to Athens. So if it says conf with White House counsel, that would mean there's a conf with White House counsel. Nathan's like, oh, crap. So after the word travel to Athens, that's a semicolon. He's trying to He's like, yeah. Which means that we're going to go into a new thought. So Nathan's like, crap, I'm totally screwed. Well, if it says I traveled to Athens, then I traveled to Athens. Oh, great, perfect. So the following sentence must also be true. He's like, well, there's a semicolon right here. New thought. Divide that by 7. Carry the 2, parentheses. If before them, I before E after C. Okay, so you billed for a conference with White House counsel. If you billed for it, would that have occurred, Nathan? If I billed for a conf with White House counsel, this document doesn't say that the conf with White House counsel happened in Athens. That's not what that says. Okay, but I'm asking because you said if it says travel to Athens, then you would have billed for travel to Athens. Is that correct? Yeah, that's correct. So if it says conf with the White House, would you have billed for a conf with the White House counsel? Yes. Oh. And so if you billed for it being completed on May 23rd of 2022, do you believe that's when it would have likely occurred? No. Oh, okay. So can you tell us what it means when you would put a date in that date completed line here for your invoices? What does it mean then when you put that date in there? I believe that it would have been completed on or before that time. Okay, so if there was a conf with White House counsel, as you just admitted, it would have occurred. It would have occurred on or before May 23rd, 2022. Yes. Okay, and if you billed for 8 hours at $250, there are two, as you explained, there are two different thoughts there. There are two different actions in that description. So the 8 hours would have been split among those. Is that, well, I think he's already answered that by saying he needs to look at his notes. So I'm going to object for that reason. Well, is that his testimony or is that yours? Well, okay, I'm objecting on speculation. All right, let me ask him. Nathan, when you filled out these invoices and it has billed 8 hours at $250, what does that mean in practice? Well, it means it took 8 hours, says Nathan Wade, to complete the tasks that are described in the description column. Okay. So this would mean here that it took 8 hours at $250 per hour to complete the tasks, which are described as two separate things. You've got travel to Athens and conf with White House counsel. Is that correct? That's correct. Do you remember, Nathan, who your contact was at the White House counsel's office? I do not. Would it be you that would have reached out to the White House counsel's office? Possibly. Do you believe it would have been, a paralegal or subordinate or an assistant that would have reached out? He already answered that. Well, I asked him if he reached out. He said he didn't know. So I was asking if he remembered whether you would have had a paralegal do that. Nathan, did you have a paralegal contact White House counsel? I don't recall. Okay. Do you remember, Nathan, who attended this conference with the White House counsel? I don't recall. Is it safe to assume that since, Nathan, you billed for the conf with the White House counsel, that you actually attended this conf with the White House counsel? Yes. Okay. Now, do you remember if it was in person or by telephone? I don't recall. And if you don't recall whether it was by telephone or in person, how would the committee figure that out? Would it be to get your notes? And why would you have to travel to Athens to do a teleconference? Seems like it would be in person. Now, I think he's communicating with you, says Nathan. Oh, yeah, but you can continue to answer the question anyways. That's fine. If he's talking to us, that's great. I'm sorry. I was allowing him to. You go ahead. Question. Yes. If the committee wanted to determine whether your conf was by telephone or at the White House itself or in Athens, would your notes that are accompanying the invoice, would that kind of denote all of the details? Okay, so now we're getting a clear picture. If he's saying that he traveled to Athens and then separately had a conference, what time was devoted to each? Because they're Not necessarily, right? The conference was not necessarily in Athens, or the conf. Okay, so let's be clear. The notes are a part of the file, says Nathan, and they didn't accompany the invoice. So they provided a perspective for me to respond to any inquiry as it relates to the invoices. So I didn't turn over an invoice and the notes. That's not what I did. I turned over the invoice to the to the payroll department. Nathan, have you ever visited the White House? Oh gosh, as a kid, I can remember my dad and mom taking me to the White House on summer vacations. Yeah, it was a fond memory, says Nathan. Wow, that's nice. Okay, Nathan, that's nice. And between November 2021 and March 2024, did you ever visit the White House? Nathan, let's see. Coming into DC after doing it with my parents, I would often visit the White House, take pictures, that kind of thing. So I'm gathering that you may have visited the White House as a tourist then, between November 21 and March 24. Did you ever attend the meetings at the White House in your capacity as special prosecutor? No. Did anyone from the White House travel to Georgia to meet with you? Well, that's a tough question because I don't know who is in the White House. In his capacity as a prosecutor, right? Yeah. Did anybody travel from Washington to Georgia? Question for Nathan. Did anybody from the White House counsel's office or the White House staff travel to Georgia to meet with you or anyone on your team? It's a yes or no question. Did anybody travel to meet with you? I'm not asking about the content. I'm just asking about whether it happened. Did a meeting occur? He says, I'm not asking about a privilege log level. Did any meetings occur, defense attorney? It's a yes or no. It's not about getting into the content. What was discussed, what advice was provided, what advice did Wade provide? Question is, did the meeting occur? Defense says, I'm objecting for the same reason. Okay, I don't mind if Nathan Wade makes affirmations, but I don't for the same reasons. We're getting into individual conversations and names. And it says, look, I'm notifying so-and-so. Stop the clock while we sort this out. What's the difference between saying no, a communication didn't happen, and no, a meeting didn't occur? What's the difference there? And a minute ago, he said he didn't meet at the White House as part of his duties. So what's the difference of asking, have you met in Athens? Well, that detail wasn't the difference. It was you were asking about this in his capacity. Defense is like, maybe I missed it. Well, he stated that he did not meet at the White House in his capacity. So the next follow-up question is obviously, did you meet him somewhere else? Lawyer says, well, I should have objected to that one. I should have, and I didn't. I should have raised it the first time around. But I object to the whole line of questioning now. Everything. Okay, fine. And we earlier asked, were these conferences in person or on the phone? They're on the log. Yeah, so those happened, but now we're getting into the details. She says, no, we're not. What's on the log is conference with the White House counsel. It's on his invoices. So the question is this in person or on the phone? And he says, yeah, exactly. And that's where the conference happened, which is I'm getting nervous because it's like a location. Well, I don't think that's a fair objection. I think we can agree to disagree on the kernel of what was being discussed, but on the baseline, where it occurred, who was in attendance, that's fine. So I'm asking the question about whether it happened on person or by phone. It's not a fair objection. But I mean, this is something that I think we wouldn't want to take to the chairman about this. Do we want to take this up to Jim and pause all this for this? So the difference right now is where it happened. And they're still hashing this out. Now we're talking about the people. How are the people involved? We're not asking for staffers. Evan says, do you mind if we take a couple of minutes to sort this out? So they pause everything. All right, off the record. They pause, they take a breather, everybody's at each other's throats, and we're back. All right, Mr. Evans, where are we? Where do we land? Are you going to let him answer these questions or not? All right, we'll let you ask the names and places, but don't get into substance. Fine, all right. Nathan, we're back. Thanks. Clock's on. All right, we're looking at this bill here. It says conf with the White House counsel. Do you remember where that conference occurred? Nathan, I do not. Do you remember who attended? I do not. Do you remember at all what office the attendees came from the White House? Was it individuals from the White House counsel's office? I do not recall. You know, during the course of this investigation, we interviewed hundreds of people, tons of conversations. Without my notes, I really couldn't give you any specifics now. Because I have the invoice in front of me, I could be reminded that certain things did occur. Oh gosh, so his lawyers went and programmed something into his brain. He did a good job reciting that. Let's shove that in there. Just remember it. But in terms of the specifics of the entries, I don't recall. Okay, Nathan, so now, do you remember where you were located at this period of time? You don't remember traveling in this time frame at all? Nathan, I don't recall. I'm sure you guys have means of getting, flight manifestos and things of that nature, but I don't recall where I was, which is why it's sort of entertaining watching these gentlemen go at it over this. Was this conference with the White House counsel over the phone or in person, Nathan? I don't recall, ma'am. Okay, I'm going to show you another invoice. Now read the lines here. Here it says November 18th, 2020, Nathan Wade. It says interview with DC and the White House, 8 hours, cost Georgia $2,000. Do you remember an interview, Nathan, with DC or the White House occurring on November 18th? Oh, no, I don't remember it happening. I know that it did because the entry says it did. Do you remember it occurring on or near November 18th? I don't remember it happening, but I know that it did because it says completed November 18th. Do you have any recollection of what you were referring to or who you were referring to when you said interview with the DC White House? I don't. Do you know if this interview involved officials from the White House staff or from the White House? I don't. Did the interview with these people involve the DOJ? I don't recall. Do you remember if this conducted over the phone or in person? I don't recall. Here we go. Do you recall whether you were referring to just one interview? Were there multiple interviews? Don't recall. Did you travel to DC? Don't recall. Did you travel to Georgia? Don't recall. Did you reach out to schedule? Don't recall. Same thing here. Did a paralegal do this? Don't know. If you billed for it, is it safe to assume if you billed for it that you would have taken part in this interview, Nathan? Yes. And you don't remember anything? Correct. Great. Amazing lawyer. Now I'm going to move on to exhibit number 11, which is going to be invoice number 12. Have you reviewed this? Yes. Okay, great. I'll read it for the record. This one says, witness interview, conference call, DC team meeting. Date completed was September 7th and September 9th. 24 hours. Okay, this is when he was meeting with DC or whomever, all these people. 24 hours, not even a single pee break because Nathan Wade is just like a super lawyer. Cost $6,000. Now, I know we went through this. When you used a semicolon, you said that is 3 separate things. Is that right? Yeah. And so that's the same thing that's happening here, right? Yeah. And so the conference call to DC, do you remember if this happened via telephone? Well, I don't remember if it happened via telephone. I can read though, and it says, okay. And the call, it says call, would have occurred. And if you remember, would it have occurred between these two dates, the 7th and the 9th? Again, I don't have an independent recollection of this, but on the invoice, it says it occurred between the 7th and the 9th. So conference call to DC, right? That's the big question. Who is he talking with in the Biden-Harris administration? And if you billed for a conference call, DC, is it safe to assume you would have been on that call? Do you remember? Yes, I would have. Do you remember who was on the call? I do not. Okay, so we've got 3 invoices now. We've got invoice 12. It says conference. Invoice 12 says conference call DC. Invoice 8 says conference White House counsel. Invoice 14 says interview with DC White House. So we got 3 strikes there. Now it's in DC. Now, would that help jog your memory? Since you noted that it was a DC conference call in number 12, would you have similarly denoted if it was a call rather than a meeting? So for example, conference, right? See how this one says call right there? Conference call. Although this one doesn't say call and this one doesn't say call. So if these are both via phone, are these both in person? Would you have similarly denoted a call if it was a phone call rather than in person? He says sometimes. Did that help jog your memory about any of this since we have them all there for you? No, it did not. Do you remember who you referred to when you said conference call in DC? Who I referred to? Correct. Yeah, who are you speaking with, Nathan? Oh, no, ma'am. To your knowledge, did Willis ever meet or communicate with anybody in Biden's White House? I have no clue what she did. I don't know. Do you recall yourself having any conversations with Biden's White House? No, ma'am. Did you ever speak to anyone at the DOJ regarding your role as special prosecutor? I don't recall. So yes. Do you remember? Okay, so he definitely remembers not talking to Biden's White House. So his memory works. Nobody from the Biden White House, even though he met with White House counsel. All right. So, okay. Then he doesn't recall all of a sudden. So I don't recall. He doesn't recall the agency, or he doesn't recall conversations, because he remembers some conversations, because he remembers clearly not having conversations with the White House. So he can remember some things. That's good. Do you remember speaking to anyone with illegitimate Jack's team? I don't recall. I'll go through some names just in case it's helpful. Jack Smith. Hey, did you ever talk with Jay Bratt, the Florida Oompa Loompa, who works down there? No. Did you ever talk with J.P. Cooney, works with Jack? No, ma'am. As far as the DOJ, do you remember any conversations with the DOJ? I do not. Did you ever speak with Lisa Monaco? No, ma'am. An official who is the highest ranking career official is named Bradley. Have you spoken with him? No, ma'am. So to the extent that you've had conversations, you do not recall having those. That's correct. So it's not that he didn't, he just doesn't recall. And to the extent that you've had conversations with Jack Smith or his team, you don't recall any of those conversations. And I wish these were phrased as, did you speak with them? And he could say, I don't recall. Do you recall if any occurred? So he does recall. None occurred, right? None occurred with Jack's team. Okay. Can you say that none occurred with the DOJ? There we go. Some clarity. None occurred. During your time as special prosecutor, how many times did you meet with members of the J6 committee to investigate? I've never met with anyone. And I'm just going to refer to the J6 committee to truncate things. But we remember that Fani sent a letter to Benny Thompson. Remember when that happened? I'll give you a moment to review this, Nathan. So you say you didn't talk to anybody on the J6 committee, but Fani did. Before today, Nathan, had you seen this letter before? Yes. And were you aware of the letter due to your role as special prosecutor, or did you just see it in the news? Well, I was aware of it. And because of your role as special prosecutor, Nathan, and because you saw it in the news, or what? No, because of my role as the special prosecutor. Did you have any role drafting this letter? No. Did you provide any input for the letter? No. Well, I thought you were the special prosecutor, man. I'll read the second paragraph. It says, hi, Benny, this is Fani speaking. Please accept this letter as an official request from me for access to records that may be relevant to our investigation. Those records include, but are not limited to, all these things. The next paragraph says, it may be most efficient for your staff and everybody to get us these things before this date, and we'll accommodate you. Now, the question is, Nathan, do you remember traveling to DC any time between 2022 February, let's say January 31st and February 25th of 2022? Did you travel to DC? Nathan, I recall traveling to DC. Now, where you lose me is when you start with these dates. Like, I don't remember any dates. Well, when do you recall traveling to DC? Can you tell me that? Well, it's not. I don't recall the dates. I do recall traveling to DC. Now, I couldn't tell you what month it was. I also couldn't even tell you if it was 22 or 23, but I did go. Were you on official business for Fani's office when you traveled to DC? Yes. Was it there to conduct witness interviews? Some and others. Did you ever travel to DC to meet with anyone from the J6 committee members or staff? Objection. Barnes says, what? What's the privilege? Work product. Of who he, whether he had a meeting? It's at privilege log level. You said, did you meet with the committee? That's correct. That's what you said. Yeah. And we stated before that the privilege log level would be whether a meeting occurred. Like, you've already agreed to these rules. Why do you keep changing them? Okay, so answer the first part, says his lawyer. Did a meeting occur with staff or members of the J6 committee? Nathan says, staff or members of the J6 committee. That's correct. Did they show up? Did you meet with them? No, I didn't. I take it back, says Mr. Barnes. Now here's another exhibit, Invoice 6. So he says, no, I didn't meet with anybody from the January 6th committee. Oh, really? Because you billed for it. Have you seen this invoice? This is nice. Invoice number 6. You billed for it. Well, I'm looking at this line item here, Nathan. It says conference with January 6th. What the hell's that? So I'll read it in here for the record. It says team meeting, semicolon, conference with January 6th. Research legal issues to prep interview. Okay. It says enter and it stops at V. You billed $6,000 for that. Another 24 hours in a day. No, that was for multiple days there. Are you looking at the line that I'm looking at? I just want to make sure. Nathan's like, oh crap, there's another bill. Okay, so is it safe to say that in the previous invoices, we have spoken about how when things are separated by a semicolon, there are 3 different things. Is that the same thing that's happening here? Yes. And do you recall what you meant by conf with January 6th? What does that mean, Nathan? I don't. Do you recall if this was in reference to a meeting with the January 6th committee? Nathan admits, I'm sure that it was. Okay. Do you recall whether the conference took place in person or over the phone? I don't recall. Do you recall who attended the conference with January 6th? No, ma'am, I don't recall. If you billed 24 hours for the team meeting, conf with J6, research legal issues, is it safe to assume that you attended the conf with J6 or took part in the conference? Yes. Okay, good. So now I want to enter this article. Politico reported January 6th committee helps guide the early days of Georgia's Trump probe. It was a Liz Cheney operation from the beginning. Lawyer says, you're admitting a political news article? Are you saying these articles are true? She says, well, that's about what we're about to find out right now. Barnes says, okay, well, I just wondered. So have you had time to review this article, Nathan? Yes, ma'am. Okay, and if it's helpful, the page numbers are at the bottom. So I want to point to page 2 first. And the first full sentence on that page from Politico says this. Committee staff quietly met with lawyers and agents working for Fani, just as she prepared to convene a grand jury investigation. Nathan, does this article help jog your memory at all about what you had there? No, ma'am, it doesn't. As a matter of fact, Nathan says, internally, I'm laughing uncontrollably because even the title of this article, Committee helped guide the early days. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of meeting Fani, says Nathan. No. No one is going to guide her anywhere and tell her anything. Yes, so that didn't happen. Oh my gosh. Yeah, right. You're telling me the DOJ doesn't come down and Fani's not following orders immediately? Now at the bottom of page 4, she says, I'm looking at the last 2 full sentences at the bottom. It says 2 former committee officials confirmed to Politico that Willis's team met with committee staff in Washington in April 2022, right around the same time you billed for it. Some of Willis's top prosecutors attended, including Nathan Wade and this person, as well as other investigators on the team. Hey, Nathan, now that your memory's been refreshed, do you remember a meeting occurring in Washington of April 2022, as the article says? I don't remember the month, but as I previously stated, I do remember coming to DC. Okay, well, do you remember meeting with the committee? That's what Politico said. Do you remember? No. Well, okay, we'll go back to page 2. The second full sentence says, in the previously unreported meeting, The J6 committee aides let Fani's team review but not keep a limited set of evidence they had gathered. Do you remember reviewing the evidence as the article states? Did they show you their homework so you guys could copy it? Lawyer objects. Says there's privilege there. That's the part of the investigation. We're not asking whether things were shown to him, but I think we can ask him if he contributed to the article, if he met those reporters. Mr. Wade, did you contribute to that article? No, ma'am. Have you ever spoken to either of those reporters? No, ma'am. Now it says here, the J6 committee aides let you review the evidence, but not keep a limited set of evidence. Do you see this here? So you're objecting to the question that, is this statement accurate? They're objecting. Yes, ma'am, I am. It doesn't matter if you ask him, it's the same thing. I can ask whether this happened, she says. She can also, somebody else is jumping in. She can also ask if the J6, I wish we could disambiguate who's jumping in here. I can't keep track of it. That doesn't get into specific types of evidence, Mr. Barnes. Yes, it does. How is that? Well, because it's like saying, did you review the statement? No. They're fighting it out. Back and forth. And then we get back into a question. Okay, Nathan, go ahead. So Barnes kind of relents. Go ahead. So just to redirect everyone, we're on the first full paragraph of page 2. It says, committee staff quietly met with lawyers and agents working for Fulton. Do you know if a meeting occurred mid-April of 2022? Nathan says, again, the dates. I can't attest to the dates. Did you ever attend a meeting with committee staff, Nathan? Well, you're referring to, so the problem we're having is this word staff and members. And my answer is no. Okay, so did you meet with members of the J6 committee then? No. Do you recall anyone from Fani's office meeting with anyone from the J6 committee? Anyone from the J6 committee. So like he's thinking about the members. If you look down at the next full paragraph with the sentence starting, over the next few months, is everyone there? Over the next few months, committee staff also had a series of phone calls with Willis's team. They answered the prosecutor's questions and shared insight. And so do you remember having any phone calls with committee staff? Again, staff. Or contractors? Like, is he thinking these are W-9 employees? Or are they contractors? Do you remember any phone calls occurring? Okay. Any phone calls with committee staff? No, they don't work for them. No, they're all contractors or something. So when you say you remember phone calls occurring, what are you referring to? Okay, I'm referring to phone calls that have occurred as it relates to J6. Okay, and your question is specifically dealing with staff and members. And my answer is no. And so when you say inquiry, what do you mean? An inquiry is a question. So, okay, so the questioner is now, I think, a little confused maybe. So when you say the J6 inquiry, what are you referring to? You said you had phone calls about the J6 inquiry. Yeah, your question about J6 is an inquiry to me, says Nathan. Okay, yeah, you're inquiring. She says, okay, good, for my gosh. So you're saying no. Did you not have any conversations with the J6 committee, whether it be committee staff, whether it be committee members, or anyone associated with the committee? Is that accurate? Nathan Wade is such a piece of something that he says, oh, that's a different question. She goes, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Did you have any meetings with the J6 staff? Nathan, no. Did you have any meetings with the J6 members? No. Did you have any meetings with anyone associated with the J6 committee? There it is. He goes, I believe I did. You got me now, finally. Dude's a liar, in my opinion. Now, when I say individuals associated with the J6 committee, how are they associated to your knowledge? Well, that means that they were not staff or members. Okay, so they were working on the J6 investigation? Yes. In what capacity? He says, ready? Okay, he's playing a game. See this? Ready? Like you didn't get it. You asked about staff or members. Ready? Yes, I am. Who else are you talking about? He says, lawyers. Lawyers aren't on staff? Lawyers. Wow. She goes, lawyers. Wow, you're so smart. You got us. Great job. So you made us dig around for that. So who were they lawyers for? So you met with the lawyers on the J6 team. I'm not sure. Were they, in what context were you speaking to the lawyers that they were involved in the J6 committee? Well, in the investigation. So the lawyers were involved in the J6 committee's investigation. Yes. So Nathan Wade admits he met with J6 lawyers. Great. Did they represent, so they were lawyers for the committee? Well, I'm not saying that. Okay. I don't know who they were lawyers for. I don't know. He was just working with some random lawyers. Didn't even vet them on where they came from. Great. Because they were obviously lawyers that worked on the committee staff, like the staff as a whole. No. You did not speak with any lawyers that worked on committee staff. Okay, so these were like third-party lawyers? Even shadier. I'd rather them actually talk to the staff lawyers. Were the lawyers for individuals, were they lawyers for individuals who testified before the J6 committee? Well, now we're getting closer to the problem here. Lawyer objects. Okay, well, the question was, did the lawyers that were associated with the J6 committee that you met with, did those individuals represent witnesses before the J6 committee? Incredible. He says, I don't know. Okay. So just a point of clarification, blank and I are lawyers, okay? I'm the general counsel to the committee. She's the chief counsel for oversight. We are lawyers for the committee. Okay, so she's having to educate him on how this works. She's like, well, they're lawyers. They're not staff. She's like, we're lawyers and we're staff, Nathan. And so I'm not sure in the context whether they're staff or consultants. Maybe there's a third category, but I don't think we're following you as to what you're saying, like people associated with. I mean, it's like a nebulous category. So I'm not sure what you're talking about. Well, he's an outsider. He doesn't know if they're consultants or anything. Now, I assume you're all on staff permanently. She says, yeah, we are. But committees also hire lawyers from outside. Well, not very often here. And Barnes says, well, I don't know. We'll see his lawyer. Well, that's how ignorant I am. See, I don't know the ways of Washington. No, we don't hire outside lawyers. So all that, all that clever garbage from Nathan about staff and lawyers is all no. He's being clever, but it's dishonesty. Right. Okay. So, but I think that we're having a little bit of a disconnect here. Somebody associated with the committee, we're trying to understand what the hell that means. He said lawyers associated. He doesn't know who they represent. Oh, well, so why was he working with lawyers then? Like, who are these Democrat lawyers? Are they J6 committee lawyers? Like, that matters. Now, whether they're representing the witness or whether they're representing the committee, who knows? Okay, so Nathan, we're back. Now, I want to make the record clear. You don't know who the lawyers were that you met with that were associated with the J6 committee and who they represented. Is that correct? That's correct. Which in and of itself is shocking. Why were you meeting with them? Did you give them information? Were they intelligence agents from Russia or something? You don't even know who they were? You didn't vet these people? Yeah, let's talk about January 6th. No idea who they are. Great. Amazing job. Okay, let's go back to invoice number 8. This is the one we spoke about to Athens, that line. Okay, so the very last item, it says team meeting, conf with J6, witness prep and other things. You see where I'm looking? Yeah. And just to go over the questions again, we have previously discussed how the semicolons denote different things that occurred. Is that what's happening here, Nathan? Yes, ma'am. So the team meeting was separate from the conf with J6. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. And if you bill for a conf with J6, it's safe to assume that you attended the conference with J6. Is that right? Yes, ma'am. Great. So now, so this billing date is May 31st, 2022. And with the political article that we were just reading, it talked about how the initial meeting occurred in April 2022. Then there were several phone calls following that in the months following April. So I was just wondering if you remember this conference with January 6th. I don't. Do you remember who attended the conference? No, ma'am. Do you remember whether anyone associated with the J6 committee attended this conference? Well, by virtue of the entry, it says with Jan 6. So that would mean someone associated with this would have attended. Okay, so now if we look at invoice number 14, which you already have, okay, right above that line that we already worked with, the interview with DC White House, it says J6 meeting, 8 hours. Do you see this? I do. Do you remember this J6 meeting? I don't. Do you remember by virtue of the entry if it involved individuals associated with the J6 committee? No, ma'am, I don't. It's safe to assume since you billed for this, you were there, right? He says, well, so this sort of entry is confusing without the investigative notes because this entry could be in reference to a meeting that had already occurred. In other words, it could mean that there was a meeting and attorney conference involving that with whomever. That doesn't necessarily mean that on November 16th, there was a J6 meeting. Okay, so you're saying this could have just involved something related to J6, not individuals associated with J6. Is that your testimony? Yes, ma'am. Okay, let's do one more invoice then. Invoice number 19. You see this one? It starts with Zoom Conf. You see what I'm reading? Yes, ma'am. It says Zoom Conf with investigators in other jurisdictions. 8 hours, $2,000. We looking at the same entry? Yes, ma'am. I just kind of want to enter this to jog your memory. Do you remember ever conferring with any other jurisdictions that were actively investigating or prosecuting Trump? No, ma'am. Did you ever have any communications with anyone from Alvin Bragg's office? No, ma'am. Did you ever have any communications with Alvin Bragg? No, ma'am. And she should be saying anyone associated with Alvin Bragg, right? That because we know he's very sneaky. Have you ever had any communications with Cy Vance, former New York DA? Ever talked to Kerry Dunn, Mark Pomerantz, two prosecutors who were also there before they threw a hissy fit? Remember those two guys? Alvin Bragg won. He's like, we're not prosecuting Trump. They both threw a temper tantrum like tiny babies and then resigned. Now, did you have an understanding that they had tried to use RICO in New York to get Trump? Are you asking me if I know that? Yeah, I'm asking you. Were you aware of that? He says, well, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to decipher whether I learned that in my capacity as a special prosecutor, or did I learn that in a later process? I do know that today, yes, but I don't know if I knew that back at the time. Okay, and if you remember, when you wrote Zoom Conf with other investigators, do you remember what jurisdictions you were referring to? Nathan, I have no clue. Would they have all been involved in Fani's prosecution of Trump? I don't recall. But I can tell you that no other jurisdiction was involved in my decision making. Do you recall anything about that Zoom conference? I don't, says Nathan, and I'm trying really hard to, but I don't. Do you recall if it took place one entire business day? Was it 8 hours in one business day? Was it split between 2 days? I don't recall. Would you recall if you had spent 8 hours on a Zoom conference in one sitting? Well, what I do know is that there would have been, in all likelihood, says Nathan, there would have been an entry that would have broken up the dates. But since there's no semicolon, this is it's one entry. It would tell me in all likelihood it was an all-day conference. And you don't remember anything about this all-day conference? Like, wow. I don't. You don't remember who attended? No, ma'am. Since you billed for it, you obviously attended the 8-hour conference. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Nathan says, you know what? Yeah. This entry, he says, Eureka, light bulb goes off. 1, 2, 3. If you go up 2 entries above it, you can see where I would have broken the dates up. But this entry could have very well expanded over some time, but I don't want to speculate for you. I don't remember. So you're saying it could have been a cumulative 8 hours broken up between several Zooms. Is that what you're speculating, if you will? Yes. Okay. So I want to move back to, I believe it's exhibit number 7, the judge's order, McAfee's order. That looks like the grand jury. Sorry. Okay. So the prior to the motion that this order was on, I believe it was filed in January of this year, which made the relationship between you and Fani public. Were you ever concerned about if that relationship became public, about the optics of that relationship? I'm not sure I understand the question, says Nathan. Were you ever concerned that if your relationship with Fani became public, that it would cause an issue in this case, cause motions to be filed, or for a motion to dismiss to ever come up? Did that ever concern you? Well, so now I'm getting confused because I didn't think I was coming here to answer questions about my personal life. Well, I'm asking questions. I'm going to ask you questions about the order and some of this and other conflicts that arose. There was a hearing. There was a public testimony about it. That goes to our oversight that we've already discussed at length. Someone says you better hit your phone. It's buzzing. I think this is exceeding the scope of the subpoena, says the defense attorney. You know, we don't need to get into folks' dicta habits here. Well, we're not doing that. We're not getting into it. We're not looking into sexual investigations. We're not going into that here. She wasn't implying that. Mr. Barnes says, well, now don't tell me that. Personal relationships, and they're getting back into this. Saying also that case is also up on appeal anyways. So Nathan gets here. Well, I'm going to push that button here. Okay, so you said that the point of your question was to determine whether it was politically motivated. And so let me go back to the statement. This person says, yeah, she's trying to determine whether this was politically motivated or not. He says, well, I'll read my statement. I'll read it. He says, no, she just asked the question. You can answer it. Like, I don't know. There's anything more to it than that. He says, I'll read it back to you. So Nathan goes back to his opening statement. He says, let's see. This was not politically motivated. And she says, okay, fine. We can go to the order. This is exhibit number 7. On the last page of the order, the sentence starts with however. Judge McAfee says, however, the established record now highlights a significant appearance of impropriety that infects the current structure of the prosecution team, an appearance that must be removed through the state's selection of one of two options. The defendant's motions are therefore granted in part. Nathan, were you ever concerned that there was a significant appearance of impropriety regarding your relationship with Fani Willis? He says, I don't understand what this personal relationship has to do with my relationship. He says, okay, just say you're not answering that question and we can move on. That's fine. Can you describe what led to your resignation, Nathan, the judge's order? Was there ever a possibility that Fani would resign, or was it always your decision that you would resign? He says, okay. He says, hang on one second, hang on. I don't think you can answer that or speak for what Fani believed in any way. Well, I want it to make sense, says Nathan. The case belonged to Fani, who was acting on behalf of the citizens of Georgia. Fani and her office, they are Fulton County. And so I was appointed at her designation. And so Nathan says, let's just talk this through. If Willis resigns, what authority do I have to continue the prosecution? The answer is none, because I was appointed by her. So in effect, this order, in all of its ridiculousness, said one thing, and that was I needed to resign. Does that make sense, or should we walk through it another way, says Nathan. Wow. When was your last day at the office, Nathan? His order came out in March. So March 15th was your last day? That's the day I resigned, the day this order came out. And so Willis accepted your resignation on that date. Is that correct? She did. And the resignation was effective immediately. It was. And since you resigned from Fulton, how many interviews have you given the news outlet since you left? I don't know. Is it more than 5? Less than 5? Oh, less than 5. And in the judge's order on page 19 in the first paragraph, it starts with this concludes Fani's unorthodox decision. I'll read the sentence. It says, this includes Fani's unorthodox decision to make on-the-record comments and authorize members of her staff to do the same to authors intent on publishing a book during the pendency of this case. Nathan, question for you. Were you ever authorized to provide on-the-record comments to authors publishing a book? Never. Do you know who was authorized to provide comments? I do not. In our first hour, Nathan, about how in January you sat on a special committee like a search committee, how often were you in communication with Fani about search committees and what you were doing? Daily. Daily? What forms of communication would you talk to Fani in? In person, on the phone, yeah. And earlier in the first hour, you said that the communication regarding the search committee occurred after she won and before she took office and when she took office. Is that true? That's correct. And so during that time period, January until you were hired in November, how often were you in communication with Fani? Well, she had formed a transition team to assist her in transitioning, and I was part of that team. Is that different than the search committee? Yes, that is different. Okay. So our role was to facilitate a smooth transition from the old regime into the new. So once elected, I think your question was from the time that she was elected? Correct. Yeah. January. Yeah, the transition team was very active, says Nathan. I don't know how many times we communicated. And when did the initial outreach occur for you to serve the transition team? Again, between the time of her winning the election and the time she took office. Did your transition duties continue into 2021 after she took office? There may have been a few duties that went into the beginning of her regime, but not much of anything. At that point, the transition was done. It was complete. They go off the record for a minute. And we're back. Mr. Wade, I want to ask some follow-up questions on some of these invoices. So if you could do me a favor and take a look. Do you know what DC is an abbreviation for here? Do you remember? District of Columbia. So you had an interview with DC. District of Columbia, so it's not like Diane Cobblepot. But you don't recall who that interview was with? No. So if you don't remember who the meeting was with, can you be sure that DC means District of Columbia as opposed to the initials DC? I'm fairly comfortable saying that I would have meant District of Columbia, but it could have been DC. And then it says DC White House. It does not specify if the White House in question was someone from the Trump White House or someone from the Biden White House, right? Yeah, that's correct. It doesn't specify whether it was with the White House or about the White House. Is that correct? And you don't recall either way, right? Okay, so I want to step back. At least one of the defendants in Fulton County case was employed by the White House at the time. Maybe it was Mark Meadows. So Mark Meadows was employed at the time of the indictment, at the time of the events for which he was indicted. Oh, yes, ma'am. Now, as an attorney, maybe you were talking about Mark Meadows. And is it fair to say that you might want to interview somebody who is in this position? You might want to speak with somebody at the White House counsel to talk about executive privilege. And he says, yeah, and some other regulations would be here. And so this is the Democrats trying to fix this, right? And so when you are seeking to interview somebody, you have to be concerned about executive privilege. Is that true? That's true. That's correct, ma'am. And it's a step you recall following, right? You follow privileges, don't you? I do. That's nice. Now, here's another exhibit that's been marked. This is the Free Beacon. It's a news article, news organization. Barnes says, never heard of it. Okay. Now, I just wanted to enter this in to guide our discussion. Saying, okay, Nathan, the committee has received information that Willis has misused federal grant funds. Just curious if you have any knowledge as to how grant funds are used in Fulton County. I don't. As your role, did you handle anything with funds? No. Did anything come across your desk related to federal funds? No. There's another article here. It says a bombshell discovery came after you got $488,000 in federal funds. Did you ever know anything about federal funds? He says, did I have any involvement with what? Did you have any knowledge of federal grant funds that came from Congress to stop gang prevention? No, ma'am. Did you have any involvement in youth gang prevention? No. It also says that during a review of an award, we found that Fulton County got money. Did you know about them getting money? No, ma'am. Did you have any conversations with Fani about this article? No, ma'am. Did you ever talk to Fani about using federal funds? Like when you were on your cruise in wherever you went, in Belize? No, it's Fulton County money. Did you have any conversations with Fulton County District? It's their money. No, I didn't. Did you talk about campaign funds? There was a concern that Fani's testimony said that she kept campaign funds. Do you have any knowledge of any campaign funds being used to pay for things other than campaigns? No. Did you have any knowledge of Fani keeping campaign funds with her cash that she keeps where she lays her head? Remember that? The defense attorney goes, where's that quote coming from? Where she lays her head. That comes from Fani's mouth. That comes from her testimony. What? In the hearing? Yeah, in her hearing, yeah. He says, I remember the part about the cash. I don't remember the campaign funds. He says, yeah, it came right from her testimony. Oh, it's in the article. She said cash is fungible. I've had cash for many years in my house. So for me to tell you the source of where it all comes from, Fani said, when you go to Publix, you buy something for $50, you throw it in there. Been that way my whole life. So I kept some of that cash. What's your problem? Just deal with it. So there have been allegations that money was earmarked for her campaign. And so now I'm just asking whether you had any knowledge of the use of campaign funds. No, ma'am, I didn't know Fani. Lawyer cuts him off. What article was that? That's a Fox News article. I can enter that. Yeah, put it in there. The title is Fani Willis and Nathan Wade referred to Georgia State Bar for misconduct. But of course, absolutely nothing will happen there. Now, oh, this is great. So they put an article in front of Nathan Wade. Nathan Wade says, and for the record, it has a very handsome picture of a gentleman on the front of it. Yeah, I believe that's Mr. Bradley. No. What is going on here? They show him a Fox News article. Fani Willis, Nathan Wade refer to the Georgia bar. That just says that they're doing an amazing job. Nathan says, oh, and for the record, it has a very handsome picture of a gentleman on the front of it. Question says, yeah, I believe that's Mr. Terrence Bradley there. Nathan says, no. That would be Mr. Wade. She says, that's you. What? He looks back at the picture. He says, oh, that's not me. Yeah, that's Mr. Bradley. Nathan Wade says, oh, well, that's not a handsome picture. That's not a handsome picture at all. Scratch that from the record. Sorry, buddy boy. It's already on the record. Nathan Wade has the hots for Terrence Bradley or something. Can't scratch it, my man. It's already on the record. Nathan Wade thinks Terrence Bradley is very handsome. And he probably wants to have a nice dinner with him. Isn't that fun? Nathan Wade, scratch that. Sorry, dude. It's already record. So we're just noting that for completeness of record. And it's the second page that has the handsome gentleman on the front. Okay, Nathan Wade's freaked out. He's like, oh gosh. What have I done? He's scrolling through the rest of the article. No, there's me. There's the handsome one. Okay, there you go. You found the right guy. Good job. No, it's kind of interesting. Let's carry on. Switching topics, we're just going to cover as many topics as possible, they say. The committee's also been made aware of a possible motor vehicle accident that Fani was involved in after she took office in 2021. That was a one-car accident involving her county vehicle. Whoa, that's interesting. Fani got in a car accident. Just wondering if you have any knowledge of an accident in 2021. No, ma'am. Do you have any knowledge of any accident occurring that was a one-car accident involving Fani's vehicle? Yes. What can you tell us about that car accident? Well, there was an accident that occurred maybe 2 or 3 months ago, a hit and run, but that's all I know. Was Fani liquored up with that Grey Goose, baby? So 2 or 3 months this year, 2024? Yeah, 2024. A hit and run, huh? Uh-huh. And it involved Fani's county vehicle. Was she driving? To my knowledge, she was, yes. And was it just her car? Obviously the other car that hit and run, but did she hit a car? Did the other car hit her? Do you know the logistics of the accident? Nathan says, I wasn't present, but I understand that some other vehicle swiped hers and kept going. Yeah. And did you respond to the scene of the accident, if you will? Were you involved? Nathan, did I respond to the scene of the accident? Correct. No. How did you become aware? Well, the scene of the accident was on an expressway. When I found out about it, I went to a gas station where the police and the investigators had, I don't know, what do you call it? Rendezvous, maybe? I don't know. So I went to that location. Okay, so what was your role there at the gas station? My role was to make certain that she was okay. Were you there? So what occurred after the accident? Was there a report that was filed to your knowledge? Oh, I'm not certain. There was police there. I don't know. So did your role end after you confirmed that Fani was thankfully okay? Yes. And that's that. I think we're good to go off the record, and the depo is now over. So Nathan Wade obviously was doing the same thing that we saw before. Suddenly he can't remember anything. I don't recall. The transcripts show very clearly that he met with the White House and was there in multiple confs in the aftermath of his meetings, was coy about it, and Congress is looking into it. Now, we'll see what they do about it. Maybe they can defund Fulton County or withdraw some federal funds, but that would require some actual fortitude from Congress. So Fani Willis and Nathan Wade live on to fight another day. The collusion is clear on its face. Nathan knew exactly what he was doing, but he has no records. He has no files. His lawyers did a good job of protecting him, and the person leading the deposition also did a nice job, really pinning him down. But even Nathan's getting squirrely. Lawyers, staff, members, because he doesn't want to answer the questions. Truth is, him and Fani grifted a ton of money and time from their own government. The people who should be prosecuting people who do this stuff are the ones doing it. And they're going to tell us that in Fulton County, if you have any problems with the election, just refer it over to Fani Willis and she'll take care of it. Thanks for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this, my friends. We're going to keep our eye on this case, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here on the next one. All right, and so locals, friends, we have to reconnect the locals tubes. And so locals, we are parting over a part 2 here in a quick second. And then, my friends, we are going to jump into your questions. I know I had another segment prepped on the day, but it took us a lot longer to get through that one than normal. So we'll do segment number 2 tomorrow morning for our membos, and we'll get that all situated. So let's get our locals friends reconnected so that we can bring them in on this fun. Here is what we've got. And we got locals getting reconnected. Any minute now. Let's go locals. All right, and then we're going to see what you guys have to say about this. Thank you so much for sending in some donos and some love. I see we got some new friends. Okay, so who is here on the day, my friends? Now, if you're just joining us, we spent all day, so about 2.5 hours, going through 132 pages of Nathan Wade's depo. And it was a lot of fun. But now, my friends, let's see what you have to say about this. Of course, we're waiting for locals to kick on. Come on over, locals. Who is here? Who is joining us? I see Donut modding the fort down for us. What's up, K-Bean in the house? Let's see who is here. Locals kicked over. Amazing. The tubes are reconnecting. It's a beautiful day. Hey, here's one from Milo Phone Bill. Oh, that's an interesting Democratic image. No, this is a nice one. From John McGarvey to get the show started. Took me a minute to figure out what we're looking at here. But that's a Democrat. Donkey. Being a Democrat. Hey, Milo Phone Bill. What's up, Milo? Bringing in a comment. Says, good afternoon, watchers. Listening from work. Shout out to Milo Phone Bill. What's up, Milo? Great to see you. Thanks for being here. And for that one. Hey, Osborne team. Realty executives. Welcome aboard, Osborne team. Good to see you. Realty executives, man. We love to have you here. We've got our YouTube friends. We're going to pop out this chat, bring our YouTube friends aboard so we can say what's up over here and over here. Who else do we got? Joining us on the day, Another comment from Elena. What's up? Neely is here. Says, voted early today, my friends. Outstanding. Says, early voting is revealing anomalies, aka cheating. So please vote early. And 100%, we have to get our ballots in. And we're getting ours in here very soon. Bonnie, what's up, Bonnie? Says, I know one reason Fani likes to go on cruises. Cruise lines serve Grey Goose. Is that true? Is that what they do? That's why she likes it. And Napa Valley, too. I think she went there, right? So she just likes the booze. Michael Stetson says, hey, 5 membos coming in. Thanks, Michael, for bringing in A. Watson, Silver Umbrella, Q Revere, G-Men NC, and Lisa Gordon. Bringing in 5 membos courtesy of Michael Stetson. Thank you, Michael. Welcome aboard, new friends. Goofy for Jesus says McDee's should have a mega meal. Yeah, we covered the Trump stuff this morning, so we'll have a segment on that coming out. But it was a lot of fun. That was great. And I have a hankering for a Big Mac, you know. Hey, Eddie Block. What's up, Eddie? Says, just 3D printed these new Trump wall plaques. I think I might start selling them along with my Trump nightlights. I can make them in any variation of colors, up to 4 colors at once. That is awesome, actually. Trump, that is really pretty cool. This 3D printing stuff is wild. Thanks for that, Eddie Block. Good to see you, Eddie. Hope you're doing well, my man. We had this one from Flex Abel. Says, hey, got a job after 10 months. Good for you, Flex. Hey, great news. Economy sucks. You are awesome. You are awesome too, Flex. Hopefully you're doing something to celebrate. Congratulations on that. I know it's going to be outstanding, and you're going to be right at home in your new position. Thanks for sharing that with us. Hey, it's Rice Baby. Dun 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 dun. Check it. Rice Baby. It's Bruce Rice Baby. Yeah. Steven, 1872, coming in the house with Captain Kazoo. We got Michael Maybe coming in with Liberty and Lady Autumn Sky. Nuaners. Daryl Dennis. Eminem drummer coming in with Kristen McGinn. Robert. Wet Shot Miller. Brought in courtesy of Ice Rice Baby. Dun 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 dun. What's up? B.H. Williams in the house. We got Sushi, Grey Goose. Read the transcript. In the transcript, it wasn't exactly verbatim today. It wasn't exactly verbatim. I would introduce a couple things here and there that weren't actually said there. What is this? Spots. Hey, remember when Trump said that remember when Trump said at the Al Smith dinner that Chuck Schumer could be the first female president? Remember when he said that? He took it too seriously. Here's Chuck Schumer. Oh, he's barbecuing more hamburgers again. The man's ear really brings out crying Chuck's eyes. The man's ear is back. Or is it called the bro? Or is it called the bro? I don't know. Hey, Sheila Poo, 1,000,000 hugs to you. What's up, Sheila? Thank you, Sheila. Bringing in 10 membos. Sheila, you rock. We got Eric Sean is here. Marcia Lee, Hate the Man, Terry LaBeth, Terry Lee Rodman. We got Fun LVN. Randy's here. John Seuss is here. Nurse Cindy, and another one from Steina. What's up, Steina? Welcome aboard, Sheila. Thanks for bringing in 10 new membos, Sheila. Grateful to have you here and bringing in the membos. Hey, it's more Bruce Rice Baby. Bringing in Jennifer Cruz, Don Stopoulos. We got Patricia Victory, H. Hampton, HH Custom Knives, Christikoff, Brian Mack, Gerald Rogers, Gina, and T. Renee coming in courtesy of Bruce Rice Baby. Dun, 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 dun. Joe Biden's right side is here. What's up, Joe Biden's right side? So what we are led to believe is that anything that comes out of a lawyer's mouth is privileged and communications with anybody. Yeah, especially in Fani Willis, Fannyland. Things are wild there in Fannyland. Everybody is privileged and protected, provided it's useful for the Democrats. Hey, it's Elvis of Dallas is in the house. What's up, Elvis of Dallas? Bringing in 10 new membos. Poem Paget. We got Celestial Rose, Tam Bucci. We got Chris Kaysen, Jackie Kwan. Faith is here. What's up? Paul Fairfield, Carl Spackler, Christie's Critters and Creations. Welcome. Tammy English and D-Rock in the house. Welcome aboard, new friends. Courtesy of our friend Elvis of Dallas. Thank you, Elvis, for bringing in 10 new membos. Great to have you here. And hey, voice of the people says the word dicta is breaking you, Rob. You need a bad words outlet. Off label is willing to host. Ha 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 ha. It was, I mean, you know, what can I do? If it's in the transcript, there's only so much I can do. I tried today for like a little bit, but then I couldn't help it. It's really the perfect word because a lot of people are wondering why Nathan Wade dicta, you know? Hey, Kelly Davis. What's up, Kelly D? New supporter in the house. Great to have you here. Welcome aboard. Grab the members only morning stream. Hey, Sheila Poo is reminding, I think there's a little subtext here, you know, like, share. There are only 960 likes and 5.6 thousand in the chat. And yeah, those ratios, seems like we might be missing a couple thumb presses on that like button. If you have any, thank you, my friends. Thank you, Sheila, for that. Hey, Bruce Rice, baby, bringing in 10 more membos, Bruce. That's a lot of membos today. Tim Drazinski, thank you. Texas Rose, you say. We got Angela Hope, Original Ghoul, Tails DM, Michael Lee, James Hart, Dan O'Connell, and Data Junkie in the house, bringing in 10 more membos courtesy of Bruce. Thank you, Bruce, for that. We've got this one from Angry Bell Sprout. What's up, Angry Bell Sprout? Says, can we all agree that Kamala has one thing right? We should transport 100% of the migrants before they are allowed in the country. Oh, or actually, I put trans like as transport, but you actually meant trans, like transition them. Yeah, I don't think they would come anymore. If you're like, hey, we'll let you into the country, but there's one thing you're going to have to leave behind before you come across. Comprende? I don't think that would work out that well. Actually, I mean, it'd be great for border security, but I don't think they'd be happy about that. But we should probably do that then, actually. Hey, Libby T, what's up? Hey, Trump him in the house. PK from AK. We've got Bo Brunkhorst, last of Yahoos. USA the best in the house. Good to see you, Libby T. Libby, thanks for bringing in 5 more membos, including our friend from Alaska. That's cool. Is that Arkansas? What's up? What's up, PK? Hey, what's up? Glenn Hug in the house. Glenn Hug in the house. Glenn Croy is also bringing in some new membos. What's up, Glenn? Thanks for bringing in these membos. Semper Fi Gert. Susan B. We got Cyber Chaos, T. Hill, Kelly Parker, Mima, welcome. Debbie Campbell, Sharon Petit, Michael Green, Kobe P. Gifted membos, courtesy of Glenn Croy in the house. Thank you, Glenn, for bringing new membos in. We also want to thank Sheila for bringing in 5 more membos. We got Chris Capaho in the house. Karen is my name. Bonky Bear, Dawson DeTrana, Double Yo 7 Woodworking. And Chris Capaho is welcome. Don Goff, welcome. Brought in a membo, Judy Gray, bringing in Judy Gray from Don Goff. We also have Glenn Croy, bringing in 10 more membos. Glenn, amazing. Thanks for this. Nessa Hoyt, Yep is here. Philip Callan, Nathan Kilmer, Walter Black. We got S. Ryan, Unwokel, KHR, and LawTube Junkie. That's amazing. Good to see you, LawTube Junkie. From Glenn. We got Paul Hoffman, membo for 8 months. Says, Nathan's the definition of slimy. What does is mean? What does is mean? Yeah. It's very, very complicated. And he was, you see how coy he was? Ready? Lawyers. Oh my gosh. Mia Tamama. What's up, Mia Tamama? Says, voted Trump in Vance today in Colorado. Felt great. Yes, everybody needs to vote. Even if it's in Colorado or states that you might think are going to go blue anyways, get those votes in. Glad to have that, Mia Tamama. Let's turn Colorado red, shall we? Hey, Cliff Norman. What's up, Cliff on Locals? Says, just in. Disgraced Fulton County DA Fani Willis's lover just admitted under oath to multiple undercover meetings in Harris's administration. Yeah, exactly right. We covered the whole dang transcript here, Cliff. Thanks for sharing that article too. Hey, Chubby says, clearly those lawyers for Wade passed the bar using the SpongeBob method, deleted common knowledge, common English words to retain information. Yeah, it's amazing. He can't remember anything. Ollie, what's up? Bringing in a membo called Rockman999. And Sheila Poo says, how in the world can an attorney not remember whether he had an in-person meeting with the White House on one of the biggest cases of all time? He can't remember. He can remember. He's just dishonest and not telling us the truth. Thank you for that, Sheila. Hey, Muffin Rando says, can remember notes in his head, but can't hear. Yeah, remember Nathan was also that guy the last time he did that other investigation. I think he was getting paid like $500 an hour or something. He says he just kept his files right up here. That's where it was. Hey, Steph, 8 months. So close, I'm about to pop. You're right, about to pop, getting all big. And we're going to have a new baby here soon. We can't wait to meet him or her. It's going to be a soccer player, I can tell. Sheila says, can't recall who I conferenced with, but it definitely wasn't anyone in the Biden White House or the DOJ or the J6 committee. Right. So, so you do remember exactly who you talked to. So you're going to make us guess for it and dig to the bottom of it? Ridiculous. Thank you, Sheila. Hey, Venus Gonzalez says, hit that like button and show Rob and the crew some love. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate your support. Thank you, Venus. We do. That's a great statement, Venus. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, we do appreciate your support, and thanks for hitting that button. This old guy says, Nathan's memory is so bad that when he turns 60, they'll be feeding him pablum and applesauce and changing his diapers. Yeah, I was going to say 60, what is he? I mean, he's on a... That's really a good indicator of his mental capabilities. That case is bad. Yeah, that case is bad. Tyler says, Nathan Wade says, Dicta? I barely knew her. Thank you, Tyler. That's a good one. It's perfect. Hey, Q Reinhardt. What's up, Q? Joshua Mainer's coming in. Captain Safety. Samuel Bass is here. We've got Bob Taylor. Question everything. Good advice. Jay Lynn. Digitalis. Schlista's here. Janice Camp and Gizzards in the house. From Q Reinhardt. 10 more membos coming in the house. Hey, Ollie. Welcome aboard to one new friend. DJT, you and I together, we win in 2024. Good membo. Tyler says, Barnes thinks the DOJ policy change is a conspiracy. Said it actually limits powers, but I'm still wondering why previous versions didn't have lethal in it. Yeah, that's a good question, Tyler. It's a good question. And I also put that into ChatGPT too, I think. I put that one into chat because they're very complex things. I said, is this new? And they said, yes, it appears to be new. Or whatever AI I put it into. Because after we did that segment, I went back, or I thought about that segment. I'm like, well, there's probably a bunch of other directives. So was that in other directives that I'm just not seeing because they're buried under the ethers of human, knowledge or some bureaucratic website somewhere? So I asked ChatGPT, I uploaded the website, the document. I said, is the section on lethality new? And I'm pretty sure it said it was new. Or it may not have been ChatGPT, but try it, see it. I think it is new. But I could be wrong. Sharpening Man in Texas says, tried to vote early in southern Texas today, but nobody speaks English. Nobody speaks English. In Texas? That's not good. Angry Bellsprout says, should Vance just kick in the door of the Senate and impose himself as president of the Senate instead of being weak soy, sometimes tiebreaker vote? Well, that's not his role, right? So, Angry Bellsprout, right? So he's not the vice president is the president of the Senate. But I see what you're saying. Should he just now declare he's the president of the Senate? It's an interesting tactic. Probably not yet. Not this time, no. Hey, Barry says, I heard from a somewhat trusted source that Kamala actually did work at McDonald's, but apparently she was fired for... too much secret sauce. Can't confirm it, though. Can't confirm it. Angry Bellsprout says, adorable how long Rob took to understand the first chat. It's adorable how long it took Rob to understand the first chat. Let's see, where was that first chat at? The first one that came in today? Yeah, it's not adorable. Some people think it might be a condition or something, and that maybe we could use... Where was the first chat? Let's see. Oh, this one? Well, I didn't know what I was looking at here. Yeah, I don't know what the heck I was looking at. But that's a donkey with his head up his derriere. Let's go check out our friends on X and say what's up before we go over to locals for our members only after party. We got some locals comments and some friends to say hello to as we debrief on the day. Let's see what's happening over on X though first. because we had some friends over there and some comments. And so, hey, it's Paul Me No. Word of the day. Word of the day is dicta. And of course, that is your boy on some very nutritious supplements. And dicta, there's an asterisk here. Asterisk is Nathan's famous hot dog. But from Paul Me No. Dicta, word of the day. Nathan's famous hot dog. Says words are difficult. Nathan Wade says, what do you mean by obfuscate? What do you mean by obfuscate? What does that mean? What are you trying to do here? Hey, Jim. Hey, Jim. Hey, started a new job months ago. Been listening at work, but haven't been able to watch. Made it through this one. Nathan's a scumbag. You're right about that, Jim. Shout out to your work. New job. That's awesome. And wow, Allison Morrow is doing a lawsuit. Allison Morrow is suing the state of Washington. Shout out to Allison Morrow. We love Allison here. Last time she invited me on to come do a stream with her, none of my technology worked, and I wrecked it. Should probably reach out to her and see if we can make up for that. Hey, Dicta. Fred Pedamonte is referencing Dicta. What's up, Dapper Dan? What's going on? C. Arg. It's good to see you. We've got Mercy and Templar over there. Yeah, hey, MWID says, if you want to learn about how to evade questions, watch this. Every American who goes through a similar process should learn something from this. And George asking about receiving foreign money. We talked about that this morning. Congress is investigating Act Blue for getting foreign money. So some good comments on X, my friends, and we're very appreciative of those. Thank you so much for sending those in and for being so supportive of the work that we're doing here. We are now going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, our members only community. We'd love to have you join as a member. If you're not a member, the reason to become a member, one, it's a great way to support our work. It's a great way to meet new people. Lots of awesome people in the private live streams that we do for members only. We don't turn on ads in the promos. We don't read promos in our morning streams. We do morning live streams 6 days a week. It's election season, so we're having a ton of fun catching a bunch of stuff that we can't get into here. We'd love to have you join us as a member on YouTube or on Locals. And we'll see you tomorrow on the stream in the morning. But if you're a Locals member, we'll see you over on Locals right now because that's where we are retiring today. We'd love to have you come and join us. But if we don't see you over there, I want to thank the mods and our meme smiths. Shout out to Paul. What's up, Donut? We got Donuts clipping for us. I saw K Beans in the chat. And this morning we had Carrie B and many of our mod friends modding for us. We have the best mods in the world. Locals, hang tight. We're going to be over there in a quick second to get into a couple of comments and after party. But my friends, we'd love to see you over there. If we don't, well, we are going to be back here tomorrow to get into it again. It's crunch time. We got 14 days from tomorrow until we have our election. Clock is ticking. And we're excited to be going through it together with you. And so if we miss you over at Locals, we will be back here tomorrow to get into it again. And in order to do that, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.